Welcome to the Geek Homeworld Podcast. I'm your host, Ed, aka the Savage Tech Man. We talk film, TV, and tech, all from a geek perspective. You can find us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and you can subscribe and follow on YouTube at Geek Homeworld. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Be a part of the Geek Homeworld. The day has come. I never thought it would. 10 years in the making. 16 years if yay, if you count it all. Welcome to the 10th anniversary, 10-year anniversary celebration of the Geek Homeworld Podcast. This is going to be the most special show I've ever done. And of course, as always, it's going to be the best. And I am privileged beyond belief for the possibility of the possible guests that will be on this stream tonight. And starting off with a big hero of mine. But before we get to who that is, and he's on screen right there, I just want to tell you, going to do all that stuff. I need you to non-violently hit that little button to subscribe to the channel here. If you're listening on YouTube, if you're listening, and I'm not supposed to say wherever you get your podcast, because that's a no-no to podcasters, on the certain platforms that we are on, which are all of them, that you get your podcast, please subscribe there and all that good fun stuff. And as you can tell, this is unrehearsed. But anyway, our big guest today is Daniel J. Lewis. He is, I have my notes here.
Oh, gosh.
He is a Christian father, entrepreneur, podcaster, educator, advocator, innovator, multi-award winner, Hall of Fame podcaster, and International Podcast Day co-founder, among many other things. And he's also one of my podcasting gurus. I've listened to him since my journey began in 2008. Oh, by the way, DigitalCavemann, welcome.
Greetings.
Greetings. This is DigitalCavemann of DigitalCavemann Presents. He's got this really cool channel to check out on Instagram and YouTube and all those other places. And we've known each other for several decades at this point, and we started podcasting together. And I literally am using the same program I was using as a backup now for my setup that I have, Audacity. And I went to the internet and I was writing Mr. Google a letter. This is back in 2008. And I said, "Dear Mr. Google, how do I podcast? And what software do I use?" And so I Googled podcast, and Audacity, the Audacity to Podcast came up, and I was like, oh, well, that sounds clever. A nice play on words there. And that's how I found Daniel's channel there, the Audacity to Podcast. And I've been a fan and listener ever since. Daniel, at one point, did a comedy podcast. I was one of your listeners. So I go way back, and you've done many, many things. And I need to say welcome, I guess.
Well, after all of that, thank you so much. I'm happy to be part of this celebration with you. Congratulations. 10 years sticking with this. You know, so many podcasters don't make it past episode 1. So for you to make it 10 years, you guys are awesome. I applaud you. Congratulations.
Thank you. And we may have a special guest popping in. I don't want to name drop because I don't know if they'll be here, and then I'll feel bad that they didn't show, and I don't want them to feel bad that they didn't show, but there may be some surprises. So there's your hook to keep listening and watching. Let's see. Starting my journey in 2008. So like I said, I Googled how to podcast, and I've loved Audacity. I've used it ever since because honestly, to be frank, I didn't know anything about podcasting at the time. And I grew up, one of my heroes, in fact, I think in my speech class, because I'm taking 5 classes right now, which I'm so overwhelmed and excited about. But one of them is a speech class. And we have to pick someone in the last 1,000 years who we thought was inspiring or who inspired us. And I don't know anybody past about the 50 years of my life. So growing up, I remember running home, waiting for church to get out so I could run home and write down what the top 40 songs of the week were, listening to Casey Kasem on American Top 40. And so I come from a love of radio, and flash forward, that led to podcasting. And so I just love when I was young, I was a strange child, and you can hop in here, Caveman. You probably agree on some of this. I made up my own TV station and my own radio station.
Well, who didn't? I mean,
yeah. I'm there with you guys too.
Sit in front of your boom box with a
yes,
a blank tape in there, and you're recording. Hey, next up is this song, because I'm a DJ.
Exactly. Yeah. Later on, I became a DJ. Just some parties and stuff. That's fun too. But I believe in like going after things and just really. And if you want to do something, give it a try. You'll never know. You only get one chance in this life, so you might as well. And in creating my TV station, I realized I needed programming for it. We would get the TV guide. So for like a year, I collected TV guides. And then I would go through and I made my dream list of every single night of the week, 24 hours a day.
I think it's very important here. Some people listening might not know what you're even talking about. What is this TV guide of which you speak?
I don't think there's anybody that young listening.
They're like,
but
who are these old geezers? No.
there used to be these things called digest-sized magazines.
Like Reader's Digest.
The TV guide was one, and it had a few stories in it about things that were going on TV. But the biggest feature of it was it had all the TV schedule in it. It wasn't like these days when you turn the TV on and it tells you what's on.
It's already there.
Or you're not even watching TV because you're using a streaming service and you just go and it's a la carte. But, we actually had to wait for the programs we wanted to watch to be aired on TV. And the TV guide.
That's true.
What told us where to find what we wanted to watch.
And later on, when I thought we were wealthy, but we weren't, when we were able to somehow get HBO years later, that little HBO guide that would come in the mail, and then you'd see it and you're like, oh my gosh, this month or next month, I'll get to watch the movie that came out a year ago in theaters, and it was exciting. I created my own TV station, my own radio station. I had 2 DJs. They had similar names. I don't remember their names now. I had this is all in my head, and I would get my little 45s and I would play my 45s, and I was Casey Kasem. So that's a long story about how I got into podcasting. And flash forward several decades later, I literally stumbled into a chance to have my own radio show, which I did live, a Savannah on Film, and it's out there on YouTube if anybody wants to check it out, and in podcast form on the podcast apps that you
and the links are going to be. The links are going to be in the description, right?
Yes, they're going to be in the I'm supposed to say in the show notes, as Daniel would say. I must admit, of all the things I've learned from Daniel and Ray Ortega, and another person I listened to was Cliff Ravenscraft and some others, I didn't always apply everything the way I should. I was going to make my own way. But
M3 is in the chat, by the way.
Oh, M3. Oh, welcome. Oh,
hello, M3.
M3 Reviews. He's got an awesome channel out there. M3, we're doing probably a 9 p.m. plus open stream. I think I told you guys. So, I have to put this on screen. We'll appreciate this. His last name happens to be Ortega. You don't know Ray Ortega, do you? That would be awesome if you did. M3 Ortega. So anyway, thank you for being here, M3. Anyway, so we're doing a stream later, another one, because I love to celebrate. And I'm usually more put together. I'm like really excited tonight. So I'm like way off script here. There's no script.
You're hyped up on the adrenaline, on the caffeine, on the excitement, on 10 years.
Yes, 10 years. And I'm going to be frank. Well, I'll be Ed, but right now I'm going to be frank. And there were times and I got this term from you, Daniel. I don't know that you coined it, but I heard it from you first. So that means you invented it in my world. But I pod faded. And I know it's not a term you probably like, but I think we all go through that as podcasters and, finding what your purpose is. Dave Jackson, who's another one of my podcasting gurus, I think his band's jamming right about now. And ironically, my cousin, some of my family can't be on here because my cousin's band is down in Savannah debuting her new band. So how ironic is that? How is the universe is crazy? But Dave Jackson talks about finding out what your why is, the reason you're doing it, who your audience is. And, those are fundamental things to know. And sometimes, life, me and Caveman always say life gets in the way. There's many times we wanted to podcast, and me being a creative person, also being a writer, if a day goes by that I'm not creating something, content or otherwise, it feels like I've completely wasted time. And a lot of creative people will probably agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you're like, that was a day I lost that I sat on the couch when I could have planned something.
That's when you have a publishing schedule like I have, Ed. Then you will never, ever have to worry about that.
I know. I was on that. And I'll tell you, in the early days of podcasting, and Cavemann, you will tell, we used to do back in the days of Skype. We had 4 or 5 people on a stream back then. And you had, what was the AT&T?
I had AT&T DSL.
DSL.
Holy God, was it?
And I think I was the fastest one. I had cable internet, but it was still slow. And I remember we had a stream that we did because we used to do really long ones on our previous podcast. And
what do you mean used to?
Used to. I know. Long form content, right? It's coming back.
We're streaming for 2 hours tonight, and you say you used to do really long ones. What were really long to you?
We did a 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours. Ooh. We've done some 3-hour streams recently. And I don't even know what we talk about sometimes, but that's the fun part. But
it's rambling.
Some of it's rambling. The early podcast, we had a podcast from 2008 to 2014 or 15 was the Digital Man Cave. And that came from, Man Cave podcast. Right. Cause I get your name because it's so
I will mix sometimes when I'm doing hashtags and crap too. I'll sometimes still put that in.
Because the upstairs of Cavemann's house literally has all the Star Wars battles, the action figures, and this is way before he started this channel. This is when we first met. So, you know, he's a hardcore collector, and the birth of me starting the podcast was that I just want to talk to my friends, and after you ended up moving where you moved now, and you've been for some time, we couldn't hang out. And this is before you could really get on an internet chat, you know, or a video chat or anything like that. There was no Zoom. There was none of that going on. And I would travel up to your house and make the trip from Savannah to your undisclosed location. And it was an excuse for us to get together and to talk. And so it was kind of an appointment thing. I would come up there. I'd bring all of I'm not going to try to pull equipment out. I'm not going to, because I got it all packed away. Yeah. Before I had the Roadcaster, it's it's a good one. So it is a comedy podcast. But before I got the Roadcaster Pro, which I'm in a relationship with for many years, and it's been a very happy relationship. I, like a lot of podcasters, I had cables, even more cables than I have now, everywhere. Everything was, you know, you had a mixer here, you had a limiter here, and you had this and this and this. And how I met or found out about Ray Ortega, he taught me how to do a mix minus. And that was a video I played on loop for several years. So before Rode figured it out, the old school way, Ray taught me how to do that. And Daniel helped as well. I'm sure he had some videos that I watched on that and learning best practices. But the advent of the podcast that we first started in 2008 started because I just wanted to hang out with my friend and talk about Star Wars and whatever else we were talking about in 2008.
Star Wars and movies and technology and...
The Dark Knight came out that year, right? 2008 was The Dark Knight.
And do you remember when we used to try and come up with clever titles for every single episode?
Every episode, it was a play on words. It had to be a creative title. And none of those, if you put them in a search engine algorithm now, would it pick them up as being anything you'd want to watch? It wouldn't. There was such a play on words that it didn't get the keywords of the algorithm. That didn't exist back then. And so I've always liked clever titles.
Well,
I want to. Oh, go ahead, Daniel.
There's definitely a place for that, especially among entertaining podcasts, and that's the thing. Like having done a clean comedy podcast in the past,
right,
and studying podcast SEO and teaching podcast SEO, some podcasts just don't work all that well with SEO on a per episode level. On a top level, they can, but on the per episode level, you would be wasting your time many times to try to work hard on SEO with it. that's when sometimes you just have to have fun. And like you were saying, coming up with crazy titles, what I used to do with my Clean Comedy podcast is we would just say something at some point in the episode that sounded funny and is sometimes even funnier taken out of context. And that would become the title of the episode. Like there was one that Mangoes Ruined My Love Life was one episode. Or, a well-hydrated husband, or different things that would just come up as we would say it. And it'd just be something that kind of stuck in my mind of, oh, that would be a fun title. It sounds funny. And when people listen, they would actually get it.
One of the great, sorry.
I want to say, like, I think our very first Digital Man Cave podcast episode, or did I say that right? Digital Man? Yeah. Okay.
Digital Man.
Anyway,
Cave.
There we go again.
You are the Digital Caveman.
Yes.
Two ends.
I'm the Digital Caveman. So on, I want to say our first episode of that podcast was, I want to say it was something like episode 1, the podcast menace, or something like that. And I want to say like our first 6 episodes was a play on a Star Wars title from,
right. The original 6
corresponding episode.
Nice.
And that's carried over to Geek Homeworld because literally September 7th, for whatever reason, ended up being when Digital Man Cave ended, and I didn't want to break the streak. I come from this song's been on the chart for X amount of weeks. It hit number 1 for X amount of weeks, all that in my brain. I guess I'm Rain Man or something like that. But so I didn't want to break the streak. So one day, like today, I could say 10 years later or 16 years later to the day I started podcasting. So September 7th is somehow become a date that's moved with me throughout my life.
A date to live in infamy.
I guess. And talking and back to what Daniel said, probably one of the greatest gags is improperly muting parts of when somebody's saying something, just like putting the little bleep in there. And you could that could be a whole show just about that. And it can be hilariously funny. It makes everything sound dirty and inappropriate when it's not. But so yeah, my love for podcasting and doing this and Caveman was, and we had some other people that came in and out of the podcast, a few regulars and a few, transient people. That doesn't sound right. Transient. Yeah. Just transient people would just wander in and just, hey, what's going on? I got to give a shout out for those who are not watching this on YouTube, but are listening on their favorite podcast app. M3 Review says my longest stream was 11 hours and 55 minutes. Wow. Was there bathroom breaks? There had to be. My diabetes, Wilford Brimley would have come and hit me with the diabetes, which is an old joke, about how he said that before. People were making fun of that. Me and Caveman, we turned that into like a whole episode. And I think we laughed for like an hour and a half. It was just crazy fun. So, and when we were much younger and not as wise, I guess, but, and worldly or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, I look at podcasting and like the idea of Geek Homeworld. It's been hard for me to niche it down. I got it down to film, TV, and tech, even though if you watch my previous videos up to this point, there's not been much tech because I can't afford tech anymore.
Yeah.
when you get older, tech is so expensive and it's so out of date almost when you get it. Daniel can probably speak to a lot of that. I do look forward when, is it Christmas time? When Daniel's got his deals, and forgive me, I don't have all your stuff pulled up here. Like I said, I did. You usually have some good deals on like microphones and different things.
Yeah, occasionally I look, even just on a daily basis, I check for, is there anything interesting on a good deal? Black Friday, Amazon Prime Day, all of that stuff. Lately, there's been a lot of junk on sale. Not as good of the deals. There have been a couple really nice deals, but some stuff though, like the ATR 2100X USB microphone that is so loved in podcasting, that used to be $100. So when that would drop down to like
is that the Joe Rogan microphone, or is that the
No.
SM7B?
That's the SM7B, yeah, that he uses. Yeah, the ATR 2100X is the new version of the original ATR 2100 USB.
Okay,
it's a USB and XLR microphone. And it's one that we've recommended a lot in podcasting, and there are some others like it, like the Samson Q2U and such. But I think that the 2100X is the best one. And when it would drop down even just $20 to $80, that was like a big sale. Now, surprisingly, that microphone has come down in price, so it is regularly priced, seemingly regularly priced now, for only like $50.
Here's one of my first ones.
Is that
Can
the
you name
Q2U?
It is the Q2U USB, and
Recognize that gray.
And everybody, yeah, exactly, and everybody recognizes the next one, because if you're a true podcaster, you get like me, you get, and probably Daniel and some others, you get angry when it's used the wrong way. This is the Blue Yeti, and it's not blue, but this is what angers us when you point it this way. That is not the polar pattern. It's like this, and you can adjust the polar patterns on the back. So
what I like to say about the Blue Yeti is that it's the most overhyped, overpriced, oversized, abused, misused, and confused microphone in podcasting. Other than that, it's an okay microphone.
I love that. That was my bread and butter. The Blue Yeti increased my sound from this little guy and cheap little microphones, that were like the phone microphones you used for your telephone back in the day.
Or a headset mic like Cavemann is using.
Yeah. But he's Cavemann.
Yeah, no, I don't have that mic installed. Now when my battery on my lapel mic runs out, then But I have another lapel mic. So when this one dies, I got another 2 hours on that one. And so,
well, let's see your geek cred on this. Have you ever had to improvise to make something help your podcast sound better? Like improvise with non-technology, not like software hacks or hardware hacks, but something crazy that you've had to do to make your podcast sound better.
Are you asking me or are you asking Ed?
Either of you?
Because I'm going to tell you this. When we were heavily podcasting, I recorded, I sent the files to Ed, and that was my contribution. He did all the editing. He had to literally take 3 to 4 different audio tracks and try to line them up in Audacity to make the final file. And so that
we had one friend of ours who fell asleep during one of our podcasts, or he may have passed out. I'm not sure. And God bless him. I spent 8 hours on just his track alone. And I think after that, I stopped being so precise. I would worry myself to death for perfection. I was following you guys, and I'm like, this has to be the best sounding thing that has ever been heard by a human ear. And it has to be perfect. And I became obsessed with because I was really into, I was I did have to improvise. To answer your question about improvising, before I had my pop filter, I used probably some pantyhose or something like that. I imagine I think we all have.
So I've got a funny story about that, because I did that exact same thing, pantyhose on a metal hanger. And I was using like the old cheap Laptec stick microphone that, came with a Sound Blaster sound card when we used to buy sound cards for
PCs.
my
gosh, I remember that.
That was my first podcasting microphone, was that with this wire hanger and pantyhose over the front of it. When I first got into podcasting, I was single back then. Where was I going to find pantyhose? There was no way I was going to go into a store to buy pantyhose, because that would be awkward, right?
That would be extremely awkward. These days, not so much, but...
So instead, I did something that would not be so awkward. I asked my female coworkers if they had any pantyhose they didn't need anymore.
Yeah, that was much less awkward.
Trust me, I've worked in HR, and that would get you a trip straight to HR's office. You cannot ask your coworkers.
Pardon me, do you have any used pantyhose that possibly have runs or something in that you're not going to use anymore and just throw away? Yes, I would like those, please.
Yes, I would, and I'll run you straight to HR and then out the door. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So and we've gone through the different like lights, like the little ring lights that go around the cameras, stuff like that. And so the technology for like live streaming just wasn't there. And we didn't have the kind of between us, the internet connections. And it got to where I couldn't run. I don't know how far you live from me, more than 50 miles.
It was about
an hour,
60 miles.
60 miles. So
maybe a little bit better than that.
Depending on how fast you can get away with driving on back country roads in Georgia, you could be there in a few hours, or I don't know.
Or if you followed the GPS that you had at the time, you might never get there because it's got you off chasing rainbows. He literally left my house one time and he was like, "Hey, look where I'm at. I don't know where I'm at, but my GPS took me to this rainbow."
Dude, there was some place, it was like through farmland, and it was this beautiful farmland. It just went out like this. It was gorgeous. And there was this I love clouds and taking pictures of stuff. And there was this gorgeous rainbow. And I'm like, the good Lord didn't put that there for me to just drive by and just keep going. I think he wanted me to stop. And I had like one of my favorite songs on the radio. It's probably my boombox radio, where you take off, you have the boombox in the back seat, and then you take one speaker off and you bring the other speaker over here so you're in stereo while you're driving. And I think it was probably a good Don Henley song, probably The End of the Innocence, if I remember. And I pulled over, and ever since then, I've been a rainbow chaser, and that's fine. I've got no problem with that.
That has been a constant
running joke between us.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of that.
Sounds like it means something completely different today.
What's Ed doing? Totally he's off chasing rainbows somewhere.
I was doing it when it wasn't popular. So, oh Lord. So anyway, but yeah, so part of it, was the going up there, and it's just like we would always go to movies, or we did for a while, but I had another friend at the time, and we would go to movies like every day if we could.
Constantly, yeah.
Constantly.
We're going all the time.
All the time. I mean, there wasn't a film I probably didn't see during that time frame. And so I just wanted somebody to talk with. And a caveman will tell you, we're in our, I'm in my mid 50s, and
I'm almost to my
you're almost to 50s. You're almost to your early 50s. Go back. Nothing to see here. Go back. Enjoy that time. Trust me. And Daniel, he's timeless, so he doesn't worry about age. But I remember, now I've not forgot what I was going to say.
That's okay. It'll come back to you in about 20 minutes.
I know. What was I talking about? I get ahead of myself, but I don't know. So I just love that you're talking
about chasing rainbows.
See, I'm not thinking of rainbows now. So anyway, I was chasing rainbows up to your house, but so it was just an excuse. I liked talking about movies all the time. I've always said this throughout my life. I could live in a cinema, which, as badly as they're upkept, is probably not a good, healthy thing to do. And you can't afford it, God knows. But I do still like cinema. I like the theater experience, and I love just, giving 2 hours of my life away to a vision of something that hopefully I hadn't seen before, and being transported. And for me, the radio growing up was like that, listening to Casey Kasem, listening to, the radio. I'm not going to pull them out, but I still have some American Top 40 albums that I won off the radio and I did it old school before there was touch tone and all that, when it was a rotary dial. And then when we got redial, that changed the game. So I've been a bit of a collector too. So I love radio, and I love that. And so my love for that, the best way to describe me is in Charlie Brown Peanuts cartoon, they have that pig pen. It's got that cloud of smoke around him, and he walks around.
Yeah.
My wife says,
smoke, dude.
Yeah, my wife literally says that I have a cloud of smoke around me, but it's noise, basically. So I'm basically like,
I cannot disagree with that.
Yeah, obviously. So, so that's part of like where I've been and what brought me this far. And sometimes, I'm doing podcasts, and you can I got caught up in the algorithm chase and, I've got to have so many subscribers. And, I hate that, for me, it was like when I wrote a poem, and if I liked it, then it's good enough. I created something out of nothing. That's good enough. If I created a podcast episode and I did my best, then that should be reward enough. And if people like what I did, that's even more reward. And if that, from that point, becomes something that eventually is monetized, that makes me a living, that's just more icing on the cake. And, so do I do it for fun? I'd love to do it as a business, but it hasn't, that's not been in the cards yet. And just, I've got my hands in a lot of other things, a lot of, what are the things you put on the stove?
Got a lot of irons in the oven.
That's what I like to say is I like to mix metaphors often. And so one of my favorites is, as an entrepreneur, I have my hands in many fires.
I was going to say that. That's hilarious. I like that.
That made me think of Superman too.
Oh yeah.
When they were in the hotel at Niagara Falls and, he goes to grab his glasses out of the fire.
He's like, oh, Lois. Oh gosh, I love that. Oh, here's an embarrassing honeymoon story. My wife will have no problems with this. It's not the actual, well, we were on the hunt anyway. Calm down, Ed. Okay. So I can't swim. I was born on the coast, but I still can't swim. I tried to swim, but I do a great impression of a drowning victim. I really do. And quite convincingly. So we were somewhere in Gatlinburg, I guess it was, Tennessee, because that's where you go when you're married. You have to go to Gatlinburg. I think it's required. I think there's a law.
No, but I don't believe that's the case. I didn't go there.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love it. And around there, Helen, Georgia, that whole area is awesome too. Really beautiful.
I've been up there. And
but we were at some place that was the rapids, and so
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so my wife gets in the inner tube and she's going down the river, and there's a voice inside of me said, do not get in the river. You do not want to get in the river. And I can't say what it was, divine intervention or fear, or I don't know what the voice was. So I'm literally like Superman in Superman 2 when he was trying not to, turn into Superman and swoop in and save Lois when she jumped in the Niagara Falls. So my wife is going down the thing. She's having the time of her life, other people in the river. And I'm running along the side of the road there and all that. And I was like, you need to get out. You need to get out of there. I was telling, I was just overreacting. It's so embarrassing. And she was really upset when we had to carry our inner tubes back up the road and people were driving by us. But I literally went into the camp. There was where you park your campers. And I ran in there. People must have thought I was crazy. And I was got to the riverside. And I was like, get out. You can get out down here. And this is crazy. So whenever I see Superman 2, it makes me think of my honeymoon. Partly. So here's a crazy story.
Lois and Clark were on a fake honeymoon. So
that's true. It's
precedent for that, I suppose.
And Daniel's like, what the heck have I gotten into?
Superman 2.
It's been a while since I've seen that one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Gosh. So Daniel, let's stop talking about me. Let's talk about you.
I was having
because you're the guest. That's always fun to have the guests talk about themselves. What is the hottest thing in podcasting right now? And I know where I'm going with this.
Depends on who you ask.
If I asked Daniel J. Lewis, Hall of Fame podcaster, he would say
Podcasting 2.0. I think is the hottest thing because it's bringing so much innovation to podcasting, so many things that we've wanted to do for years in podcasting and just couldn't get the momentum behind it to accomplish. And a lot of things that have been needed, and some things asked for by audiences, some things asked for by podcasters, some things kind of like, I think it was Henry Ford who said something like, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse. Some stuff kind of like that, where we are inventing new things that people aren't asking for yet, but I think that they're going to really love in the future. And that's what I'm really excited about.
I need you to take that pot of tea and I need you to turn that pot of tea over and spill all the tea and tell us exactly what you're talking about on that. Oh, we have someone popping in the chat here that's going to make this a great celebration. I want to welcome Ray Ortega.
Woo!
What's up, everybody?
Greetings.
Ray, we're just talking about you.
Oh, no.
Ironically, we have someone in the chat watching us, a guy called M3 Reviews, and his last name is Ortega. Wow. So I don't he's related.
He had to go. He had to
go? Okay. So
yeah, there can only be one of us in the same place at the same time. It's funny that you said you were just talking to me. I do have a hard out because my family just got tickets. We're going to go see Beetlejuice. So you conjured me up. You must have said my name 3 times.
That's good. Well, I won't spoil it. I saw it the other night with my wife. So y'all have fun.
Yay or nay? Up, down review. Just the thumbs up.
I don't want to ruin your experience.
It's okay because I
love the original. How about that?
Okay, that's right. I'll take that.
Ambiguous enough?
Yeah.
I don't want to steal your joy.
I mean, sequels are hard, man. Sequels are hard.
The best thing I can say about it is I loved seeing, what's his name?
Michael Keaton.
Thank you.
Michael Keaton Douglas, by the way. His name is actually Michael Douglas. I just learned that today.
I sent that to you, Caveman. I was going to tell you about that. He's going back to Michael. He was always Michael Douglas, but he couldn't be Michael Douglas because there was some guy named Michael Douglas, a famous actor, right?
Yeah.
Daniel was just talking about how we were going back to these type of microphones, that we were ditching all of our high quality because we wanted our Yeti Pros back. No. We were talking about, we just got to talking about podcast 2.0, and Daniel was about to break down everything, and I so rudely interrupted him.
Well, no, I mean, it's great to have Ray here. In fact, you know what?
Yes.
Ray, let's kick out Caveman and Ed, and let's just do Podcasters Roundtable.
When Dave gets here, that was the master plan. This is Ed is rooting for it, so he's just going to become producer, and then we'll just kick up a roundtable.
I'm like, this is going to be a backdoor pilot to restarting Podcasters Roundtable.
That's right.
So welcome, everyone. Alrighty, Daniel, you have the floor.
Well, Podcasting 2.0 combines a lot of features that start out as technical things first, and then it's doing this so that it can be developer friendly for both the publishing platforms like think Libsyn, Captivate, Blueberry, Buzzsprout, Spreaker, all of them. Those are the publishing platforms. That something that will work for them to build into their systems, and something for app developers to be able to build into their systems so that we can get these new features in place for doing really cool things. Like one of the things I'm most excited about, and I frequently try to remind our people working on this, that we have to focus on the listener or the audience member, because they need to be the ones who benefit the most from these features. So one of those features that's the most exciting thing that unfortunately is taking the longest to actually implement is cross-app comments. Here inside of, right now we're streaming with StreamYard, and this provides a good example of how simple this can work. That here inside the StreamYard interface, we can see the comments that come in from YouTube. If we were also live streaming out to Facebook, we could also see the comments on Facebook. Now that's on our side, but the people on Facebook can't see the YouTube comments and vice versa unless Ed brings them onto the screen. Well, in podcasting, this idea of cross-app comments would be able to bring the comments section across the apps so that if someone comments through one app, someone else can see it in their podcast app and they can respond to it. That kind of back and forth around an episode. So not only do you then get direct feedback from your audience for the episodes, they can answer questions, they can just give you praise, they can say whatever. They can also build community with each other and start having conversations back and forth with each other, maybe getting into debates, maybe sharing resources with each other, answering questions for you, pointing them to old episodes of your own. Things like that can get really exciting when you actually get the audience engaged with the podcast. And that's why I'm so excited for that potential.
You did bring up a really good, that's been a challenge when you're on different platforms. You have different listeners that ingest your content differently on different platforms, and to be able to send it out to different platforms and then for them to see you properly, and be able to respond, and the people on the other platforms to see them cross-platform
is important, very important.
And something I want to throw something here to Ray that he'll catch up on in a moment where I'm leading up to is think about, even though so much stuff starts with the technology first and gets really geeky first when it first comes out, think about what tools enable you to do, what kinds of shows can be made when the tools exist to do these new kinds of things. So I'd love to just for a moment throw this over to Ray, because Ray started a show because of a technological tool that existed. Ray?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's right, Daniel. Nice transition. The infamous Podcasters Roundtable, which Daniel's a co-host of, hiatus? I don't know. It's ambiguous, but yes, StreamYard. Actually, no, it's true. Back. It's coming back. He's on a mission. I was going to say StreamYard, but it's just because we've been on StreamYard for so long. But StreamYard was the pivot we did from Google Hangouts on Air, which was just, they launched that. And before we were, I was doing a podcast audio only. I had a video podcast before that. And if you wanted to link up with someone on video, that was like Skype and recording Skype. If you remember back in the days, Twit, and he had the, what was it called? I'm blanking on the Skypeosaurus, right? It was not a thing you just did. And then Google comes out and they're like, here's an easy way to meet online via video. And I said, you know what? I have a show for that, or I want to try that. And so gathered some friends, started a little show about podcasting. And, fortunately when, look at me, that's me at the table on Twit. That's amazing. Is that a printout?
Yeah, I printed.
That's incredible.
I'm still printing the internet. Sorry.
That's amazing. I should print one of those for myself. That's why printouts are, pictures that you can touch are so important, because other digital pictures they just go away, right? Some dustbin and printed pictures. Anyways, yes, Daniel, thank you. I started because of the tech. I started that show, and it was a what I call successful show because I met so many amazing people, including Ed. And everyone else that tuned in. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And Ed tried many, many years ago. He was like, we need to do our show on YouTube. And I was like, nobody wants to see my ugly face. I know.
So we'll just be audio podcasters, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then now everybody is on, and you see where this is going. There's such thing as a podcast that has an RSS feed. And then there's YouTubers that everyone has a podcast, only available on YouTube though. And go.
I thought you said we weren't going to get political.
let's Dave,
RSS is political. It could be.
Ed and I had a conversation the other day, and I was just trying to, get under his skin a little bit. And I was like, when podcasters say, oh, be a podcaster, and if you're a YouTuber, say you're a YouTuber, and I said, well, that just sounds kind of elitist when you say stuff like that, and so we had a conversation about that, and he was trying, podcast has to have all this, and YouTube doesn't have it, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I said, if it's audio, it's audio.
Dave Jackson would say, if you're a YouTuber, be proud that you're a YouTuber. It's like, if you're a podcaster, you got to have that RSS feed. And I know YouTube's trying to force us into YouTube music. I'm not buying it. And so, you're a podcaster now. Here, put podcast on your YouTube videos. And is it just semantics? Is it just a sign of the times? Are we going from, get off my lawn kids to, what the new kids are doing? Am I wrong? I don't know.
It's important. It's an important distinction for a producer, someone who makes content online, because so for the audience, it's not, right? Because it's a show for the audience. They just want to get it where they want to get it. But if you are making content and putting it into a podcast, right, then you can put yourself into Apple Podcasts, right? Spotify, all those things. If you say, I'm going to start a podcast, you do it on YouTube, you can't take that and just put it into those places, Apple Podcasts. So as a producer, you're missing an entire giant audience, right? I'm pretty sure you don't want that as a producer. You want people, you're making a show so people will consume it. The more people, the better, right? And so the opposite is true. If you are a podcaster who exists on Apple Podcasts, and maybe that's the only place you exist, you're not on Spotify, but beyond that, if you're not on YouTube, we hear it all the time, the number 2 search engine in the world, you're missing out on a lot of audience. So I think it's an important distinction for someone who is behind the scenes. For someone consuming it, doesn't matter.
Good point. Daniel?
He explained it a lot better than you did, Ed.
I did not explain it well. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
The big bucks.
That's right. That's why we make so much money.
That's why he's a sound engineer influencer, as I put down there in the bottom.
Oh my gosh. Hey, that's a new one. Sound engineer influencer. I like that one. That's right.
I think there are aspects of it that's semantics. There are aspects, though, where it is important, I think, to have these distinctions. I hate the phrase, wherever you get your podcasts. Please don't say that phrase. What I think is a much better phrase is in your favorite podcast app. I think that's so much more personal. And
or go to my webpage, which is bleep, 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 bleep.
Yeah. That's the main thing is I tell people, have a website, make you getting your podcast as easy as visit website, press play. It needs to be that simple.
And that's part of, I know I've heard you guys talk at some point about controlling your RSS feed or owning it to an extent. And I know sometimes I think with Spotify, there was an issue whether you really owned your RSS feed. Am I correct in that conversation, or what are your thoughts? I mean, you definitely want to be in control of your RSS feed, correct?
In control of, yes. I think ownership in the internet world, there's actually no way to 100% own something. There's even no way to 100% control something. Even if everything is powered through your own domain, what if the domain registrar has a problem with you and they kick you out? Well, then you have no more domain and everything breaks. You could think, well, I could use my IP address. Well, that's depending on there not being firewalls blocking your IP address and stuff like that. So the idea of 100% total ownership and control is not possible. But having control, even if it's an RSS feed that lives on a different domain, like from your podcast hosting provider or whatever, being able to control what goes in that and maybe someday redirecting that to something else if you decide to use publishing tools, that's the kind of control that I talk about. And when we're talking about RSS feeds, that is the technology that makes podcasting possible. And podcasting as a word is really more a description, a label of a particular distribution method. So a podcast is not a type of show. There is kind of this emerging weird, loose definition that some people, like the people who say they listen to podcasts on YouTube, those people will watch something on YouTube, and to them, the difference of what a podcast is based on kind of weird things. Like, do they see you talking into a microphone, wearing headphones, and a couple people sitting around doing that? Then that is a podcast. That's what they think a podcast is. Some people think that is what defines a podcast, which that isn't. I mean, that's how radio shows are recorded. That's how some TV shows are recorded. Lots of things are recorded that way. So podcasting is not a description of a format. It is, at its technical form, it's a particular distribution method of a show. So we all have shows, and we host those shows, and we present those shows in different ways and use different technologies. Some people have audio-only shows. Some people have video-only shows. Some people have video and audio shows. And that's what I wish we would really think about more, is just, we have a show. Let's just say that. I have a show. You can watch it on YouTube or get it in a podcast app. I think it is nice to also say I have a podcast, but now because there's so much confusion about what a podcast is and wherever you get your podcast, that whole nonsense, some people just don't quite know. What I like about saying a podcast and in your favorite podcast app is it communicates subtly to people, you need a podcast app to get my show, because my show is a podcast. So therefore you need a podcast app to get my podcast. But you could just be a broad show where you tell people you can get it almost anywhere or at my website, anything like that. I'm firm set though on everything on YouTube is not a podcast. Where it does start to get blurry is when the exact same content is published in multiple places. What is it? It's a show. It's not a podcast only.
And now I've done the same thing where I have it automatically, and I thought about this different ways of doing it. And I know you've called it kind of cheating, where you just send your video podcast straight to YouTube and it's a static image. I know that's a pet peeve. And I agree with you to an extent there, but I found myself sometimes I'll watch YouTube while I'm doing something, or sometimes I'll sit down and watch YouTube videos and all that. Sometimes for hours, depending on the content. But then there's sometimes I'm doing chores or I'm running around somewhere and I don't want to go to my podcast app per se, like something is just on YouTube. And so I'm listening to it. So I'm not watching it, but I'm listening. So I know it's kind of cheating the system because I don't really call it a true podcast. I try to label mine now as here's the audio podcast, audio only version versus what they'd regularly get on YouTube, which has a video component. And in line with that, it's some of my classmates, they're in their early 20s. I'm 54. So when I'll tell them they find out I'm doing a podcast, like my instructor found out I was doing a podcast, and she basically she's like, hey, could you help me set up some equipment? So she's about to teach a podcasting class. And I set her up and the person that she's going to have do the podcast. And I gave them basically a lot of free stuff. If I was a professional, I could have charged them for all that information and setup. And I didn't mind though. And, but when I tell, I've got my business cards, I'll say, hey, or if you like such and such, if we strike up a conversation and I'll mention that I'm, and I've been in the film industry as a production sound mixer and other things. And then that'll lead to me talking about my radio show, which will lead to me talking about podcasting. Because anytime I can talk about podcasting or Star Wars, I'm there. And so when I talk to some of the 20-something-year-old classmates, their first words are, well, what's your YouTube channel? Where's it at on YouTube? Because they're grown up in this, and I don't know if it's a generational thing, because that they consume, this is a generation coming up almost completely. When we get into Gen Alpha, they're completely raised on the internet. I guess Gen Z is, I don't know where the generations begin and end, what year, but it's a different way of looking at what a podcast is. And I basically agree with everything you say there, Daniel, on that. And, but
part of what makes this difficult too is the way that YouTube is handling this. And I would even say the way that people have handled YouTube. So what you've talked about is what I call fake video. When you're uploading, I know you said audio or you said video podcast earlier, but I know you meant audio podcast, uploading it with a static image. I call that fake video because it's not something you actually watch. It is only the audio, but it's converted into a video file in order for it to live on YouTube.
Right.
That is a way that people have used YouTube, and I haven't liked that. And there are many reasons for that, some data behind that just shows that does not perform well on YouTube.
Well, it's almost like the point, if you thought of it as a TV show, if I had a TV show, if I had a radio show and I put it on TV and just had my logo there, you want to see something moving. You want to see some interaction. Yeah. You don't want to just see my logo for an hour or 30 minutes.
Yeah. And so people generally go to YouTube expecting to watch something. However, there is also a generation of people creating content on YouTube where they often show something, but sometimes they don't have anything to show, so they play generic video. An example of that is video game people on YouTube. There are some video game series that I've been a big fan of in the past, and I'll follow some of their channels. And in their normal videos, they will show video of something they're talking about in the game. Like, hey, here's how this gun performs, or here's how to build your character out, or here's this new feature compared to how it worked before. That kind of stuff, definitely visual content. but then they have other content they want to share that has no visual component with it. Maybe it's rumors that they're talking about. Well, what do you show on the screen for a rumor that someone said to you? You don't really have anything. So what they often do is they just have B-roll footage of them playing the game that's in the background while they're talking. And so I understand that. That's the kind of stuff that when I see that, I get annoyed because I, as a viewer, wonder, are you going to show something, or can I just let this play in the background and only listen? I don't really know what to do with this. That's been part of this evolution into now I say kind of with air quotes around it, Google launched YouTube podcasts. I should put launched in air quotes too.
Right.
Because what they did is the laziest thing I've ever seen such a big company do. They basically did nothing and called it YouTube podcasts. What they could have done, and I would have loved it so much if they did this, is made YouTube provide an experience that was optimized for consuming audio, where you could upload an MP3 file to YouTube or automatically ingest it through an RSS feed or any technical thing going on in the background, but it is only audio. And then the YouTube interface would change. So instead of seeing a 16:9 framed video that's just a static image, you could see an audio only player, and it would be very obvious this is an audio only experience, and there would be things around that that still enhance the engagement of it. That's what I would have loved to see YouTube do, and that could have made things so much easier for podcasters or anyone promoting content on YouTube that is audio only, like those video game streamers. If they have content that is only audio, they could upload it as only audio. Yeah, mixing content, but if it's about your favorite game, do you really care if you're seeing or not seeing pointless video? They missed an opportunity there, and maybe they'll still do that again in the future. I'd love to see them do that. But they are contributing to this confusion because of this kind of experience that they've just not optimized.
Cool. Well,
yeah, he explained it much better than you did too, Ed.
I was all over the place, and I'm sure I went off on several tangents that I'm still not back from. Now, Daniel, I know you said you had to pop off in a little bit, so if any point you need to pop off, feel free to just leave, and I won't be offended if you're coming back. But can you tell everybody, Ray and Daniel, can you real quick just promote the heck out of yourselves, starting now? Where can people find you?
Well, I'll pop out for a few minutes in just a moment, so I'll go first. I have the Audacity to podcast. It is currently on hiatus because I am also a single full-time dad homeschooling my son. So I've got my hands full, and the podcast is just one of those things that I can't do right now. So it is on a hiatus. I'll get episodes out when I can, but you can still listen to plenty of episodes over at the Audacity2podcast.com. My main product that I do to help podcasters is Podgagement, formerly known as My Podcast Reviews. And it's all about helping you engage your audience and grow your podcast through a bunch of tools that I've built into that. And that's at podgagement.com. Think of podcast engagement, podgagement.com.
Cool. Ray, where can people find you? And when they go and find you, what will they find?
Daniel, if you jump off, good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. And maybe that roundtable will come back. So not Podcasters Roundtable. YouTube for me, we're talking about this YouTube, and I actually started off as a video podcaster and then went to audio podcast. And then somewhere maybe after that, right in the middle of that was YouTube channel, right? And so for me, also busy and just youtube.com/Ray Ortega. But I think in my lower third, I think I included at Podcast Helper. So Instagram and Twitter, I still call it Twitter, is at Podcast Helper is a great place, but RayOrtega.com will always be the jumping off point. Anything I do is going to be there. But I am focused more on the YouTube these days. And when I say that, I just mean I'm releasing an occasional video as opposed to an occasional podcast. So that is where,
you're not chasing algorithms.
I'm not chasing algorithms. I mean, you don't That's an interesting term because you are always chasing algorithms. Actually, in fact, the fact that I'm not in an active podcast and only on YouTube does mean I'm chasing the algorithm, right? Because the beauty of, there's a big difference there too, which I don't know that everyone understands. You have a podcast, you have a connection to your audience. That connection is never interrupted. If someone doesn't listen to an episode, it's because they didn't want to, or they haven't checked their app. But the app certainly said, there's a new episode here. It's not the way it works for a subscriber on YouTube. True. Right? I have subscribers on YouTube, a nice amount of subscribers, but it means nothing when I release a video. Almost nothing. Subscriber on YouTube has gone to, it's almost, I call subscriber a like button. Like someone clicks subscribe, it's mostly because they liked one thing they saw. It does not mean that YouTube's going to be like, oh, you like this? You want more of it? Sure, we'll show you when the next one comes up. You don't. I kind of, it depends on your channel, right? If you have a lifestyle channel, if you're a personality, obviously if you're there all the time, that will help you with the whole chasing the algorithm thing. YouTube is more likely to show it to more of those subscribers probably. But someone like me who does a lot of gear reviews and tutorials, kind of recreate my audience every time. And so just being on YouTube alone means you're chasing an algorithm because you need to know how to make a good thumbnail, helps out. Right. You need to know how to start a video, right? A hook. You got to have that retention. All of these things have to happen in order for your video to actually make it in front of what is a YouTube audience. Not the same in podcasting. In fact, very different listening experience because when you click a podcast, you're often ready to just settle in. Not a YouTube video. You got a few seconds before someone's like, next.
Yeah, that's true. On YouTube, you feel like, you've got that first 10 seconds to make an impact before they doom scroll past your video. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm always going to consider myself an audio podcaster because it's where I started and I love audio. I love doing the behind the scenes, the engineering of it, the, mixing and stuff. And I don't like making thumbnails. I don't like, even though I'm studying now to be a graphic designer. So I love that right now, right?
I don't like making thumbnails either. I don't know that anyone particularly does. There's probably a few people who like that's their favorite part.
I actually, that is one of the most enjoyable parts for me. But
one of three.
It's mostly due to the kind of content that I put out. I do action figure collectible type reviews and I love to photograph this stuff and I love to edit that stuff. And
you don't like the green screen as much.
What? Oh man, I love green screen.
You love green screen now? Okay.
Yes, well, as long as it's not behind me. I don't deal with it that much, but.
You must be super excited because now we don't make one thumbnail anymore. You make three. And I don't know if you have the testing. I think almost everyone has it now, the test and compare. I love the feature, but it means I have to make 3 thumbnails instead of 1.
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, do you know about it?
No, this is the first I've heard about it.
So YouTube now, when you go to the thumbnail section, they have a test and compare. So they have an A/B test for thumbnails. So you make 3 thumbnails. You can make 2 or 3 thumbnails. Okay. And YouTube shows it with that first, it's not a set amount of time. They, with their algorithms, know how long this needs to be seen to get enough data. And then they choose which of your 3 converted. And it's fascinating. So while I don't like making thumbnails, I absolutely love seeing what happens with this feature.
Is that similar to what TubeBuddy does? Because I think I have TubeBuddy, just the basic version, and I know it'll show me different. I think it shows me 3 of those. So maybe I've seen it all along and not realized what I was looking at.
I think, the TubeBuddies, vidIQs, I think their premium options offered this, but now it's just, YouTube is built in. And I think it's probably even more robust just because they have control of it. I don't know. But it is fascinating because almost, was half the time the thumbnail that I think is the thumbnail.
It's not the one.
Is not the one. And it's fascinating because to watch the science of it, because it's not just, because it doesn't matter. It used to be with YouTube, do people click, right? That was it. Right. Now they have to click and retain. And so you'll see that like people are clicking this thumbnail more, but when they watch after clicking that thumbnail, they're falling off more than the people who click the other one and they're staying. So that's the thumbnail that typically wins. And it's really fun to watch.
Well, I really hate the thumbnails with the fakes,
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, that's a product. That's a product of what works. There are so many things in content creation that I don't like. I don't like intros where I got to tell you where to find me. And I don't, there's all these like asking people to subscribe, that kind of thing. Like, hey, smash the like button. I don't like doing any of that. But the problem is everyone does it for a reason, because it works. Like if you don't tell people to subscribe, you absolutely are losing subscribers. Absolutely.
And this is an example of what my thumbnails look like.
So the figure's on a green screen. Is that what you're talking about?
The figure is the only actual physical thing
yes.
that's in
nice.
that photo.
So the beauty is here is like you would make two more versions of this, right? One would have maybe just He-Man. One would take out or maybe no text, right? Mm-hmm. Or one would be like you holding He-Man, like whatever you can come up with. Just 3 variants of the same thing.
Right.
And it's fascinating. And you can probably, I don't know if you can go back and do it. I'm not sure once it's launched you can do that, but I would go and look and see if you can even do it to an older video. That's a new test I just thought of. I got to try that.
Well, that is great information, because I'm definitely going to try that out, because I can't always come up with good ideas for thumbnails, and I don't like that arduous task of that. And
yeah,
well, the ones I hate are the ones with like somebody going.
Yeah, you got a face of surprise.
I hate those.
Yeah.
Yes. Those, oh my gosh.
I would say though, I would love for you to do one. Just like do it, and then like I hope it explodes, and you're like,
crap! I gotta do this.
Damn it! I have to do this every time.
I hate doing thumbnails.
You won't believe what happened.
Well, but, I have friends that online that do that, and they've gone, over me follower wise and stuff like that, but not, by about 100 or so. And not that I have, a ton of followers. I'm only at 750 something. So
yeah,
you worked very hard to get those followers though.
Yes,
he puts out
800
the video
plus episodes.
Yeah, we just had his 800th episode.
That's amazing.
Live stream. And you do what, 5 videos a week? Is that correct?
5 videos a week plus a sizzle reel.
Yeah. So his Jedi powers have far exceeded mine. Just to bring you up to speed, Ray, we were talking earlier. Me and Cavemann met back in 2008, and somewhere along we started.
No, we met in
1999. Excuse me, but in 2008, I'm getting old. The decades are just flying by.
They are.
In 2008, we started podcasting together, and that's when you taught me how to do my mix minus. Yeah,
wait.
Yeah. Your video was how I learned.
Who
how
did,
to do
Caveman or my video? Oh,
no,
your
did.
video,
I didn't
Ray.
anything.
Your video was one of my favorite videos.
My favorite thing about that video is I mean, like I said, podcasting and YouTube around the same time, but I would go to podcasting conferences. Mm-hmm. I'd get onto an elevator and be like, "Oh, are you that Mix Minus video guy?" Like they didn't know me for the podcast. I did one video. They knew me for one video. And which honestly, I will say was a big deal for even my podcast, because people found me, right? And that's the whole, we talk about like just being in the other place for discovery. I know with the whole fake video thing you guys talked about, like even if someone clicked on it and didn't listen, they know you exist now. So like,
it did its job.
Caveman, like your audience might be small, but like that's probably a super hardcore audience and very targeted and very probably engaged.
Very niche.
And it's it's quite filled with content creators as well.
So. Oh, right. But you just want to know, like, someone else exists. Like that's all it takes for the person who you actually want as an audience member. It's like, it doesn't matter if 100 people are like, nope, don't care. If you find one person who then moves over, like that's the person who stays. That's your real subscriber. Anyway,
you have a first member.
Yeah, for 2 months now, little over 2 months. I have my one channel member, MC DJ ACDC. Shout out to him.
Nice.
He's probably not watching, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, but and you guys might have said on your various podcasts, it's better to have 10 rabid followers than 100 subscribers, because those 10 people can't wait for your next content to be released. And they'll even let you know, like, when's your next video coming out? Or, Caveman probably knows that, the feedback you get. And so
they know when my stuff is
they know, yeah.
That's good. Monday through Friday at midnight. It's dropping.
And it's the ironic thing is, as long as I've been podcasting 16 years as of today, I'm the one that got Caveman into it. And there was some time ago I said, we need to get on YouTube. We need to get into this new YouTube thing, man. That's where it's at. And he's like, nobody wants to look at our ugly mugs. And it was back in the days when we used Skype, and then he would send his audio file over to me, and then I had somebody else and they'd send theirs in, and then I had to put all that together. And so, like I said, his Jedi powers have doubled since we last met. He's leapfrogged over me in that way.
That's amazing. Like, just for learning, like back in the day, my biggest message, if I gave a talk, was that, like, you are, by just having a hobby, you are creating monetizable skills if you want it. Like, I got a job doing this, which was a dream job, which I didn't even realize at the time that what I was really doing was teaching myself very monetizable skills, right? And so nowadays,
charge the company for your training.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm going to
you were training yourself. You were working off the clock.
That's right. So, like, that's incredible, right? Like, that you are learning so much. But like I said, with the roundtable, the only reason you can find it on YouTube, the only reason it's a video is because the technology made it so easy. And in fact, like with AI these days, like, technology is making a lot of other production things very easy. Like, for a podcaster who isn't on YouTube, you could do StreamYard. Like, or most people want to see the talking head? No, but some do. And so also the discovery part. But on top of that, like, you can drop now a YouTube link into like a Opus clip type thing, which I do at work all the time. And it spits out these pieces, right? These little these little vignettes, I'm using old people words. I don't know. Shorts. Like, you make it shorts, right? Reels, but
reels.
Shorts I love shorts. And so it's funny, the number of podcasts that I actually now consume that I will never subscribe to, whether they're their channel, not their podcast, their real podcast, because they break it up into the most interesting parts. And I'll just consume it in shorts. And if, you keep consuming it, it'll keep showing it to you. So that it's a fascinating new world for podcasts and video, YouTube as a whole. I love both platforms. I absolutely love both platforms.
Well, go ahead, Caveman.
I was gonna say, even with the video, the technology, it's so easy to use now. Unless you're using what was that you were using, Ed, for class?
Which program?
Your video and photograph editing.
I'm doing the Adobe products.
See, he's using Adobe stuff, and
we have to at school, and it's great.
And I've looked at it,
like Premiere Pro.
That is super not user friendly.
Yeah, no.
I'm like, it is very, very technical. So I'm using Corel stuff, and it's it's super easy to use, and it's easy to edit pictures. It's easy to edit video. That's one of the main reasons that I started chroma keying my video reviews is because it was so easy to do it, and I have templates now that I've made in that program where I just drop the video in there, and I might have to adjust some of the color stuff a little bit to make it as make green screen go away as much as possible. But so it's just like you said, the technology is what's really driving.
Right. And speaking of technology, and my interface that worked so beautifully when we were setting this up today, my Rodecaster Pro, it's the Gen 1.
Same.
That thing right there saved my life, because I had a radio show, Savannah on Film, and it was a live radio show, but then the pandemic hit, and I was doing it for several years, and then the pandemic happened. And then so I was able to take all the jingles and upload remotely and do my show. And I had Zoom at the time because that was like the thing everybody was using, and it worked well for me. And I could do my entire radio show from my studio at my house during the pandemic. And you couldn't do that 5 years before that, or 3 years probably, until you had something like Rode and no one sponsors this podcast, but if someone did, I wish it were Rode because I love their products. And I mean, you guys have reviewed a lot of their products and microphones and such. And they listen. I like that they listen to their community, from the multi-track recording to just so many different things that this little machine can do, that I had limiters and cables and just everything, equipment everywhere. And I still have that because I can't throw it away. You can't let it go.
You never know.
Yeah, there's boxes of stuff you can't see off camera.
Oh, yeah, I've probably got like 20-year-old cords hanging around.
Yeah.
You're not a real man if you don't have at least a couple boxes of useless cords that one day might be useful.
Yes.
Cables and planks of wood. It's just everywhere.
Yes,
That's right.
From outside of
too.
some nice boxes. Some nice boxes I don't want to throw away either.
Hey, you never know when you're going to get that call that you got to build an ark.
Don't forget styrofoam. I keep styrofoam around.
That one's tough.
I keep telling myself that I'm going to start building, action figure dioramas. I've got the hot wire cutting table, and I've got the stuff to get started. It's just
Daniel popped up at the exact right time. I got to catch a movie. So again, congrats, Ed. I mean, you've been
enjoy.
You guys have been awesome, and
you're awesome. That's youtube.com/Ray Ortega. Go check him out. He's got some great stuff. A lot of shorts. He loves shorts.
That's right.
He said it
here. A lot of shorts. I do that too. I save all my old shorts. Yes.
You save all. And thank you for agreeing to be here. I know you're busy, and enjoy Beetlejuice. I'm not going to say it again because it'll disappear.
That's right.
But thank you.
Thanks,
Ray.
you guys.
We appreciate you.
All right. I'll see you guys later.
Awesome. And Daniel's back. That was perfect. Perfect transitions there. The truth be told, Daniel had to go and watch some YouTube videos. That's what it was. I'm subscribing to all these podcasts.
Yes, I hope it was my YouTube channel. And
you mean at youtube.com/@DigitalCavemann?
Yes.
With
just
ends.
like it says on the screen.
Well, I was actually able to listen through a wireless earbud while I was still stepping away, getting my little boy off to bed. And I don't know if maybe some of my audio of putting him to bed maybe leaked into the podcast.
Yeah, if it did, I didn't notice it.
Okay.
No, I didn't notice it.
It was one of those things where, sometimes these devices get so smart that they do things we don't actually want them to do. I came back to discover, it switched things around.
My phone does that. Like, I'll be jamming away on some really cheesy 80s song and it'll stop right in the middle of my performance in the car. Like, no, not Alexa, whatever the other person is, not Siri, Alexa. I don't know, whoever does Google. That's Alexa, I think.
It's Google.
Anyway, it's Google.
Yeah.
Hey, like I say, when I'm wrong about something, I say, oh, they must have changed it. So anyway.
Ray was saying something that about the YouTube thumbnails and all of that. What's so nice in podcasting is we don't really have to do that.
Amen.
And there is, though, an aside that's kind of disappointing to that, too, because in podcasting, we can't do split testing, really, or A/B testing very effectively. Like I have seen some tools try to do some split testing or A/B testing. I call it split testing because sometimes you have more than only A and B.
Right.
So like even the YouTube thing, it's really ABC testing.
Yeah.
So it's just split testing. That's where it is.
And Daniel, now what was the format? And I remember this was years ago when everything was basically on iTunes at the time. There was I don't know why I remember 1AC. That may not be the coded or whatever, but it was where they were trying to integrate video into like audio podcasts. What was
right? That was enhanced AAC, which was a format. Even though it was AAC, the file format was .m4a, and it was a different audio codec. And what you could do with it is it was really the first format that was popularly supported to some extent, very limited extent actually, but you could add chapters basically to your audio, and those chapters could be jumpable. They could have images associated with them. They could have links associated with them. Well, we can do that thing now. Even before Podcasting 2.0, we could do that for the last several years with MP3 chapters now, which is all this information is put into the beginning of the file, technically, into the ID3 tags, but it's not. It's a technical thing that puts.
Did they really read those tags? Did they really matter as much in 2024 as they used to?
The actual content of the text fields don't really matter. The only one that matters of the ID3 tags is the image. The text fields, like if you put in your album or your artist, your copyright, your title, that doesn't really matter. There are probably some cases here and there where a podcast app or maybe an embeddable media player might read data from those tags. So I always encourage populating the ID3 tags for compatibility, but that header information where the ID3 tags is also where the chapters can exist. But in Podcasting 2.0, we have this concept called cloud chapters, where instead of putting the chapters in your MP3 file, they exist in a separate file, so that then you can edit your chapters separately from your episode. So if you ever have to correct something in your chapters, you don't have to re-upload your episode. And then I'm a big proponent for what I call super chapters now, borrowing that term from someone else, that making the chapters do a whole lot more. Because even though we have chapters in a more modern format, they still do the same thing that Enhanced AAC did. And that is a point in audio, an optional image, an optional link, and a title, and that's it. What they can actually be has not changed in years.
Now, like there are programs like, is it Descript? If I'm not sure if I'm saying that properly, like where you can like edit, you can text edit like video and stuff like that. Is that kind of similar in that technology, or?
No, that's a different technology, which
it's a different technology.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of that kind of thing, and that's one of those really cool things that's come about in the last few years, making podcasting easier. I know Ray was talking about some of this too. And also even just like with the Rodecaster Pro, these things that used to take us piles of hardware or loads of time and a bunch of tools to do all of these things. Now, sometimes it's a single service or a single hardware product can do all this stuff for us. And I love that. It's making the technology disappear, basically.
I love that because it makes it more accessible for creators. But for me, being a creator, I want to think more about what my content is than necessary. I don't mind the meat and bones of it. I want to know how it works, but sometimes I don't want to do that. I just want to get my message out there and just it be out there in the way that it's supposed to be out there. That looks the best. And, represents my brand the best. And sometimes I don't want to do the hard work. I guess we're kind of lazy. We like to order our food in. We don't always want to go to the restaurant or pick up the frying pan and cook.
Well, I would actually say it's not lazy. So don't feel like you're being lazy, wanting equipment to do more stuff for you. It's you are prioritizing more important things. Because I know some of us, Bandrew Scott has this channel on YouTube.
I like his channel.
And he does some other stuff too. Yeah, but he does these mic reviews where he'll review and compare these microphones to each other, like to this minute detail of frequency response and all of this stuff. And I know even today, many budding podcasters or successful podcasters will still geek out about that stuff. And they'll think, oh, I would so much rather upgrade to XYZ microphone or anything like that because I think I would sound better on that microphone. And you could make yourself sound better with some processing and make yourself sound like you were recorded through that microphone to some extent. Like compare, right now I talk through an Electro Voice RE320, which was given to me by Electro Voice because of my podcast and actually more specifically because of my YouTube channel. But they gave me this the microphone, and I love this microphone. It's one of my favorites. I could make this sound like a Heil PR40 because the quality level of both of these microphones is very high. The difference between them are in those minute details of the frequency response and particular range and stuff. It's not like I can make an internal microphone on your laptop sound like an RE320. No, you can get it better. Software has gotten better at making it sound better, but it's not going to sound like a studio. It's the garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, it's like whatever's baked into the file, it's almost impossible to remove. I mean, you can enhance and kind of cover up some things, but you can't always, like in sound mixing, you want to get it right first. You never want to fix it in post. That doesn't need to be the first thing you do. If you, like for podcasting, you still, I think, have a list on your website of like a pre-flight, I call it a pre-flight checklist. And, simple things like things you wouldn't think about. Make sure you can breathe properly, so you're not inhaling differently, and make sure that you're drinking water, clear your palate, things like that. Then if you get your technique right, then when you get to actually hit record, you'll do a much better job. You won't get on there. If you learn to take pauses instead of losing your train of thought and going, and you know what I'm saying, right? And, stuff like that. You learn techniques before you even hit record, and you learn how to come across better, how to communicate your thoughts better. And that just comes from years of practice and doing it. And so if you get it right the first time before it even hits the good equipment or the professional grade equipment you have, you're much more better off in the long run.
Yeah, and then the tools are making it easier to get that result that you want, or making it faster for you to get there, so that the way I love this, and I geek out about some of the technology sometimes too, but it's really because of what it enables you to do, is what I would so much rather podcasters focus on is preparing and communicating, and marketing too. That's the other thing.
Marketing's
the preparation, the actual communication, and the marketing are the most important things for a podcast. If you have the RE320 and you think you have to upgrade to the SM7B, no, you don't have to. If you're even, I joked about the Blue Yeti earlier. You can use a Blue Yeti effectively. Most people don't, but and part of that is because it's not really designed well to be used effectively, but it is possible to get good results from it.
Right.
If you're in that position of, I only have $100 to spend on my podcast, I've already got a Blue Yeti, should I spend $100 to replace this mic? I would say no. Just learn how to use that tool you have better and invest that $100 somewhere else into something preferably that would help you podcast better. Maybe a tool that saves you 20 minutes every day that you're working on your podcast. I remember the first best $15 I ever invested in my podcast was an ID3 tag editor. A super geeky thing. But what I was realizing is, here I had this convoluted workflow to get the tags into my MP3 files back when ID3 tags were more important. And this $15 app, I could buy it. I set it, even to this day, it is the default action. So if I double click on an MP3 file, it opens in my ID3 editor instead of in a media player. That $15 has saved me so many hours over the years now. And it
sped up your workflow. Yeah, definitely. Well, I can't remember the app, but I really was in love with this app, and then they made it a paid version. But it used to look essentially like the sound pads on the Rodecaster Pro, and I can't remember to save my life what it was called, but it used to be on your phone, and you could record a podcast into your phone.
Boss Jock?
That's it, Boss Jock. Oh my gosh, I was in love with that app. I thought that was one of the greatest things when it first came out. I was like, finally, somebody's bringing this together and make it more mobile. And I was like, I'll podcast more, but I didn't necessarily podcast more,
Well, if I can interject, back in the day, Ed, we also thought like the Duke Nukem and Samuel L. Jackson soundboards were the greatest apps ever. We actually had a podcast episode where we were using that as, Duke Nukem would say something, then Samuel L. Jackson would respond. And it was hilarious at the time. It's probably people would listen to it now and go, what?
It's like watching a Jim Carrey movie in my 50s is just really not good entertainment. But in my 20s, that was the funniest thing.
But at the time, my God, we thought that was the most hilarious thing ever.
But yeah, that just goes to show, technology in our lifetimes is just moving at such a geometrically fast rate. It's kind of mind boggling. And, when you learn something now, it's like, and they put it all like Rodecaster is put into the Rodecaster Pro. I know they've come out with different versions of Rodecaster Pro 2 and then the smaller little versions and more portable ones. I still like the original. There's something about it, it's kind of like your first love, and it's just, it's so perfect. And it gives me the feel like I'm still in the radio station. I'm still in the studio because I can, pod up and down my channels if I need to in different things. And I've got my sound bites I can put in there. And we love our equipment, but the equipment, and I know you probably say this, it's kind of like movies today. You can have all the effects, you can have the best sound, you can have the best picture, but if your story sucks, it's not worth watching that movie. Yeah. I can remember going to a 48-hour film competition where you basically get the elements of the film, and in a weekend, you and your team, you take those elements and make a film. And I remember sitting in the front row when we were having the award ceremony or the finalist or whatever ceremony. And these people that were in the film community, they were in the front row, and everybody was just greeting them. They were, "Oh, your film, I'm sure it's going to be great." The film comes up, the picture's fine, but the sound was hideous. Yeah. And I literally got up and walked out of the competition because for me, you lose me at bad sound. So they didn't pay a professional who knew what they were. Well, you couldn't pay anybody because it's supposed to be unpaid, but they didn't get somebody with professional enough equipment or didn't know how to use the equipment that they had. And their sound was just like, it just hurt my ears. And so saying all that is you can have the best technology, but if you don't have the meat and bones of it, then nobody cares. And they will scroll past you. They'll click to the next podcast episode in their favorite podcast app.
It's crazy too. And I've posted this out on X, Twitter, a couple times in the past too, and I always get the same kind of response.
The cesspool? I'm sorry.
The X-pool?
Oh. The social media is. I'm sorry. I didn't say that.
But I've said that no one, I forget the exact way that I put it, but basically, bad audio quality will lose your audience.
Amen.
But amazing audio quality will not necessarily gain you an audience. Because no one is going to say, "Hey, you have got to listen to this podcast because they have the best microphone ever." Or because their sound, the sound quality, like just the frequency I'm talking about, the sound quality is the best ever.
Sucker for, I can't say it properly, anamorphic 360 audio, spatial audio. Pretty amazing. I kind of like the geekiness of that,
Well, and even that, I would say that's an experience. That's not just the actual audio quality. So audio quality is not a selling point. It's not an attraction point. But the lack of good audio quality is certainly a repulsive point that people will stop listening because of a bad sounding podcast.
I'll put it in terms that definitely DigitalCavemann will agree with on this. We both at different times at our different stores, we ran the safety team, and people did care about safety. Don't get me wrong, but they cared more about safety when something bad happens. And you were able to prevent that. You were the hero of the day.
Oh yeah.
They really cared about safety when they knew somebody was doing the job and was the keeper at the gate. So it's maybe it's the same analogy in some ways with that, to an extent. So
yeah, and you think of even like this debate that's so often of how long should a podcast be, and the average U.S. commute is this many minutes, and therefore that's the perfect length for a podcast. That's all nonsense stuff. I mean, it's important to consider that in your podcast. A thing I like to talk about is the importance of context. Always making sure your audience knows what context you're talking about. Like if you're doing a movie review podcast, and I hope that you guys aren't guilty of this, but maybe you will be. But there's sometimes a podcast is about a movie, and they say at the beginning of the podcast, we're going to review Beetlejuice. And then the rest of the podcast, they only refer to the movie as, quote, the movie or this movie. And so there might even be a point where maybe it's an hour-long podcast episode.
Right.
And you have that 23.4-minute commute. And so you've stopped listening. And then on your way home, you're looking forward to listening. And you hear them talking about the movie, this movie, the movie. And you're trying to remember, what movie were they talking about? I don't... you can see it maybe on the title and such.
Well, especially if they talk about, they go off, they say they're going to talk about one thing and then they talk about two or three different things. And you're like, okay, I'm lost.
Yeah. So that kind of context is important to keep in mind. But when it comes to like the length of the entertainment, you think about, we talked about Star Wars Episode 1 earlier. And where are you guys on that? Is it the greatest thing ever?
No. At this point, it's definitely not the worst Star Wars ever.
On purpose.
That's a different discussion.
And Daniel, out of respect for you, because I hear you with the podcast numbers. I'm so old school because I guess it's the days of my American Top 40 and what number this was and what that. This is technically my 180th episode. Actually, I have a few others, but named or numbered episodes. But since you're here, I did not number it because you don't need to say Geek Homeworld Podcast, episode 180. And I so desperately wanted to call it that, but I just kept it simple. So I tried to follow your advice, at least for this episode. I can't guarantee I'm going to do that on future ones. But it's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like, I totally get what you're saying, but it's like, I'm keeping track of it. And it also helps. I feel like, I guess I'm thinking old school in my old iPod Nano that, or whatever it'll show, what was listed by, however it lists them. I don't know.
Yes. Actually, during our Digital Man Cave podcast, actually the first segment that we covered was Ed going over the numbers for movies, what number, what
I love box office.
Where it was, what the box office take was, and
and then we go into our spiels about what we liked and disliked.
I would literally, he was talking numbers, I would kind of tune out a little bit.
Right. I love the numbers. I detest math. Math is a 4-letter word. And I told that the other day to my instructor, and he's like, well, I'm going to help turn that. I love what he said. I'm going to turn that 4-letter word into the word love. Oh, that's so good. I said, but I'm going to try to pass your class because I have to, and I want to.
Because I have
to. Because I have to. I mean, I love math, but we can agree to get along, me and math. So,
yeah, and that ties into this idea of like the length of an episode or podcast and such. Is we don't really care how long something is unless it's boring. And then we want it over. However long it is, we want it over.
I don't know if you've ever listened to Lex Friedman. His dad, I think, was an astrophysicist, and I think he might be the same thing. He wears the same like black and white suit, and he's had people from Elon Musk to people, theoretical physicists and all that. And I'm usually fascinated. He will do a show. He'll come out, he'll take his first section and that's the part that I love that I can skip over all of his sponsors because it's quite popular. And because I want to get to the interview, and he has no set time on his show. Sometimes it's a couple hours, it's like an hour and a half, but I've known him to do like a 3-hour show, and I've listened to the whole thing throughout my day. I mean, because he's kind of monotone, but they really come up with a lot of different, between him and his guests. He really knows how to ask those questions and continue that conversation and make it so interesting. And like, if I'm listening to some Joe Rogan and, I may not agree with everything I hear, but then I'm like, I don't care if this is an hour. Sometimes, if it's Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson, when he starts talking about the universe and how things work, and then he has another gentleman that's on there with him, and I don't know his name, but they bounce really well off of each other, and I can listen to him talk about like science that I don't know nothing about and feel like I've really, ingested and learned something. And sometimes I find myself repeating some of those facts of like, oh, I know that's a cumulonimbus cloud, but the reason that cloud is doing that, and I won't even realize that I took that in my brain. But what I'm saying with all that is they have different links to their content. They're not trying to chase an algorithm that you have to do a 10-minute short. They do shorts. They split their stuff and open the shorts to service that little area of the internet or YouTube algorithm. But they don't have a set time for their show. Like if you're talking about something, Daniel, and I'm into it, sometimes 30 minutes, an hour isn't long enough for me. Sometimes it needs to be 2 hours. And I know you're not going to go 2 or 3 hours on something because you're right to the point. But sometimes I'm like, I could listen to you talk about it because you make it interesting. And so I agree with you. I don't think we keep going back and forth. What's the right time length? And you see the new thing from TubeBuddy, it'll come across our short views or shorts are in. Everybody do shorts now. Okay, now long form content's making a comeback. And I'm like, I'm just going to make the content as long as I think it needs to be.
Yeah.
And because I don't think you can tell a message how long it has to be.
Right.
It's as long as it needs to be.
Yeah. I mean, look at recent movie Borderlands, the Borderlands movie from the
Please don't make me do that. I refuse to go watch that, and I love movies.
Exactly. So you know how long that movie is?
I have no clue. I've blocked it out of my mind.
So you, the answer is however many minutes long it is, it's that many minutes too long, right?
Exactly.
I am a huge fan of the Borderlands games. A lot of people.
Oh, I love Borderlands
because I love the zany humor of it. I'm not so much a fan of some of the other aspects, but just the zaniness of it, the art style of it, the game style, some of the random stuff, the farming.
Just like the in jokes, like and what was it? Then I want to say it was Borderlands 2 when you have to go in the sewer and you have to catch these 4 guys and they're all wearing like turtle shells on their back, and then you get in their lair and there's pizza everywhere, and it's just,
So like you take the Borderlands movie, which is so lowly ranked. It's been so horrible. I mean, even before it came out, a lot of us Borderlands fans knew this is going to flop. They cast the wrong people for this, and we didn't even know the story yet. But we just knew this does not look like it's going to actually be a good movie. So however long the movie is, we'll say it's an hour and a half or so, I think.
Okay.
Well, recently, not because of the movie, but because of the announcement of Borderlands 4 coming out, which I love their teaser trailer. I've watched that thing multiple times so far. Because of that, I've gone back to Borderlands 1 and I'm going to play all the games all over again, because they're that good. And I've spent now multiple times the length of the movie playing the game, which has been so much better, has a lot less dialogue in it, but so much more entertaining to me than watching the highly produced movie. And that's because of the value of the content, the experience. It's not about the length of it.
That's a good point. And I'd never be one to criticize people for what they like, because I think I don't know who it was I said that liked Borderland, and actually Profit Director, he's one of our friends there, he said he never played the game but he thought the movie was fun, and I get that and I respect that. We're not going to all like or dislike everything, but I'm not going down this road about films and Star Wars. I can feel it coming. I can feel that little itch, and it all started with The Last Jedi, and,
do it.
No, I won't. But all I'll say is, I find myself saying it's all about the story. It's the story. It's the content. That's the meat and the bones. The effects might be great. The sound may be wonderful. Everything else, but I'm sure the catering was great on set. but if they mess with the story, then I've got a problem. That's the writer in me. That's, get the story right. And so it's like Beetlejuice. I hope I danced around that without ruining Ray's thing. He may enjoy it, but me and my wife saw it the other day. I didn't really care for it. I was never a big fan of the original, but I did find parts of it funny. I did find parts of the sequel funny. Beetlejuice, not the movie, but Beetlejuice, right? I'm saying the title there. But it just, I don't think it was for me. But literally this young guy was waiting for, I guess, his girlfriend, and she comes walking by, and she had just come out the restroom, and I was waiting on my wife to come out the restroom after the movie. And she walks up to him. She goes, "We have got to go see that movie again. It was great." And I'm like, okay, they love that. And that movie was for them. That was their Borderlands or whatever. That wasn't for me. So,
and I feel that way about some podcasts too. Like, Serial. Remember when Serial invented podcasting, basically?
Oh yeah.
Before
that's what
YouTube
they told
invented
us.
podcasting. Well, I tried to listen to Serial, and I just couldn't do it. I listened to the first
I was that
2
way
seasons.
too. I didn't even get that far.
Yeah, because I just wanted to see, why do people love this so much?
Right.
And to this day, I still don't quite get. It must have been the storytelling approach, the way they told the story, and some people got wrapped up in.
They came there for the Fruit Loops and got something else.
Yeah,
it was a different kind of cereal. So,
yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I get that. It's funny. It's like somebody can meet a person and think they're he's the funniest person, and you meet that person, maybe they're having an off day, and he was so sarcastic to me. He's a terrible person. You're like, what?
That reminds me. I hate being introduced to new people as Daniel has a comedy podcast, because one of the things they ask me to do is tell a joke.
Okay, man, comedy man, be funny.
Right. And I think every comedian hates it when people say that.
Right.
Because I'm the type that I prepare my content, I design my comedy, and it's more experienced comedy, not so much like a slapstick or like a get to the punchline quickly sort of thing, not like stand-up comedy, but it provides an experience of humor. And this one time, it was at a podcasting conference that someone introduced me to this guy, and he was like, "Oh, tell me your best joke." Oh no. So, okay, let's play this alone, Ed.
Uh-huh.
So, knock, knock.
Who's there?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Knock, knock.
Who's there to the third power?
So now I'm going to pause for a moment just to tell you what was going through my mind while I was doing this. Is I was desperately thinking, how am I going to tell this joke? Because the first thing that came into my mind was tell a joke. Knock, knock.
Yeah,
So,
it's like,
okay. So then it goes on like this, Beck. Here we go to the real thing. Knock, knock.
who's there?
Knock, knock.
I'm not falling for this a second time.
Well, okay, just one more
Who's
time.
there? Who's there?
Apparently someone who can't tell a joke on demand.
There you go. Wait, hold on, I got a sound effect for that. I don't know if you can hear that. That's the cricket.
Oh, I thought I'd get a boom.
Oh, let's see. That's on here somewhere. I can't see my pen. How about that?
Oh, that's close enough. One of the funniest moments in... yes, that one's good.
There you go.
One of the funniest moments in one of my podcasts was, and thankfully it was in my comedy podcast. This was not boss job.
It was intentional?
No, it was an accident.
Oops.
So I was using a soundboard app on my iPad. We talked about Boss Jock earlier, but it wasn't that app, but it was something else. But I had all of the soundboard buttons on my iPad. This was before the Rodecaster Pro was a thing. I was trying this instead of using my computer for the sound pad. And on an iPad, you can do this 4 or 5 finger thing where you put all fingers on the screen and squeeze them into the middle. and that takes you to the home screen. This was before you had the swipe up from the bottom, back when there was a home button. So you could either press the home button or you had this 4 or 5 finger pinch that would bring you back to the home screen. So I was on my iPad trying to switch to something else, and I did that. And instead of taking me to the home screen, every spot my finger touched on the screen, it activated that sound from my soundboard.
Oh, that's wild.
So it was a sudden explosion of 20 different sound effects going off at once in my podcast.
You probably created the next hit song on the pop charts and not realized it. They could have remixed it and AI.
One of today's top songs, not like 20
No, I don't know any of them. I'm too old.
Ohio toilet bowl.
Oh yeah, the was it the alphas or the Zeta? What are they? Gen Z, Gen alphas.
Alpha, yeah, they're the Skibbity generation.
Skibbity Ohio is something bad.
Ohio is something bad. Skibbity toilet is like some kind of YouTube program. I've never seen it. I never even heard of it until I Googled it. I was like, what is this Skibbity stuff?
I'm like, this stuff is so funny. But then I think about, we're Gen Xers, me and Caveman. So I'm like, our parents probably thought our lingo, our totally awesome and our rad was, what are they doing with the English language, Yeah. It's funny because, like I said, I'm in a technical college up here or down here, wherever I'm at. And and so there's a lot of 20-something years old, and some of them, my instructor was telling me, she didn't say this, but this is what I got from kind of what she was saying. She's like, they don't know how they're so much into the phone. When she's having a lecture with them, nobody just wants to read a PowerPoint. You have that up there, but then you discuss it with the class. She's like, it's like pulling teeth out of them. They don't have some of them don't have conversation skills. They don't know how to carry on a conversation. They'd probably rather text it to you or whatever. And it's weird. It makes me worried about how technology helps us in so many ways. But I can tell you technology in my lifetime has helped me, but it's also enabled me to become dumber. Like my basic math skills when I was in school, when I was growing up in school, you couldn't use a calculator. That's called cheating. Mm-hmm. Now you have to have a scientific calculator to do your stuff. And I'm like, what?
And that's even in high school. Even in high school, they're letting them use calculators now.
And so our instructor in our math class, I guess it's quantitative something, and that's just too many words for me already.
That sounds like numbers, so stop talking.
Well, the algebra is this first part, which is scaring me to death and having its way with me. And so he's like, here's an $18 calculator you can get. And he's like, I don't want y'all to spend hundreds of dollars for this because it's only part of this class that you'll need that for. And so it's just so funny. I just find it funny. But I've become dependent upon that calculator or the app in my phone or on my computer. It's technology has helped us tremendously, but sometimes we don't use some of those skills. If I don't use it, I tend to lose it. And
use it or lose it.
Yeah, my math skills were never great, and so no more brain surgery for me. I can't do brain surgery anymore. So no, but that's the thing is, I don't know. We treat it as a crutch, right? The way we, it's just interesting. It's just interesting how time and how technology has changed and is so rapidly changing. People talk about it. I saw this meme that I thought was so funny, and it says, in graphic designers, we frown upon people that use, what's the AI assisted Canva and stuff like that. That's not true graphic design. That's AI generated, blah, 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 templates and stuff, because we're supposed to be the creative ones. We come up with the ideas. We're problem solvers. And that's what we as graphic artists do. So we create, and we take other stuff, get inspired by it, and put our own knowledge and talent into it, and creating a brand, a marketable logo, whatever, will be. And so you have these tools that help you, but then you almost have, where do you get to a point like the meme said this, that there was a lady, she said, I thought AI was supposed to come along and do the hard jobs for us, but AI is not taking our jobs. It's taking our creativity. It's making the generative pictures. I want a sunset in Malibu, boom, or I want a volcano, add a volcano, and it adds a volcano to it, I mean, what are y'all's thoughts on that? I mean, I only think it's going to get, I don't want to say worse. I don't know if it's worse, but I think we just get more dependent on technology.
When I think of AI, I'm always, it's Judgment Day. The Terminators are
Terminator.
coming.
I'm a big Terminator fan, so I'm like, yes.
So,
I mean, no, that's terrible.
I am not, I'm not for the AI doing a lot of stuff for us. I mean, as a tool to help, that's one thing, but to strictly for it to just do it for you, I don't agree with that. But
yeah, I think it's like even in all technology should assist. It shouldn't. I don't think it can truly replace the ingenuity, the creativity of a human being. I don't think they'll ever get to that point. Hopefully not. Because then we maybe are truly irrelevant. If because I feel like creation is something that. And I'm not going to say I've ever written anything that I thought was great, but I think creative people at some point, they have a point where you write something or you create something, maybe a picture or something you might draw or sketch. And you're like, where did that come from? That wasn't me. You feel like you're a conduit, like Michelangelo, when he said, I think about sculpting, he said something to the effect, it was just there. He was just uncovering the sculpture, he was just chipping away at it. And so I hope we never get to a point where, I want AI and all that. I want it to assist us to make our lives better, to help us live healthier, longer, more productive lives. But I don't want it, and I would like it to cook me a nice breakfast because I don't want to, but and watch how I spin this into digital rights management. Like when Daniel's about to play Borderlands 4 and there's a and he loves the Borderlands film and it comes to, I don't know, Netflix, and Daniel has Netflix, and then Netflix decides they don't like Borderlands and that they're going to take it off the service after Daniel's paid for to see it, because it comes out, some films will come out where you can see them early. So Daniel's bought it, or let me put it in a better aspect. Daniel, you now have a PS5, okay? Ooh. And you're playing Borderlands. Congratulations. And you go, and this has happened, I think, with a game that was out there recently, that PlayStation pulled it off of their network, and and people were outraged. They're like, well, I bought that. And we're getting into the...
Well, that wasn't just games. That was a whole content media.
Yeah, on the PlayStation.
It was like, I want to say it was Discovery Channel content.
It was you're right.
Big one. There was some other stuff involved in that too. But I think Discovery was the big one.
And so we get to a point where, and I'm treading on thin water here because I don't want to have this discussion. I don't want this discussion to go the way you think it's going to go. I just want to tiptoe around it and talk in general aspects because I'm steering the conversation that way. But if someone deems a film as offensive, now the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is Song of the South. And that used to be something most of us grew up with. And I don't think you can buy that. I think Disney pulled it from their vault, right. But let's say, as an example, they want to pull content, something that was maybe acceptable. An example I can think in music is Baby It's Cold Outside, a song written by one of my dad's cousin, Johnny Mercer, back in the day, or sang by him at least. He helped popularize it, but it became some Christmases ago a questionable song, And so radio stations couldn't play it. Not that people really listen to terrestrial radio that much anymore. They're mostly streaming stuff, but still, the idea is if they decide a movie, a song is not appropriate or it's offensive in some way to some group, then even though you've bought that song, you own it digitally, they can take it off of their service, off of their platform. It's almost like deplatforming somebody, but deplatforming that item. And then you can't get it anywhere. I think that's why vinyl's coming back. I think that's why I saw the other day that CDs are coming back. And I'm like, thank God I didn't get rid of mine. But, one day, we're getting into the Internet of Things, as they call it. And I've heard the terminology that you'll not own anything and you'll like it. And I'm not comfortable with that, because if I buy something, I bought the license or whatever to use it or whatever. I should have it on demand anytime I choose to listen to it, watch it, whatever it is, that piece of content. And I worry when too little people own the content, then they can dictate our access to it. And I don't like that. That's why I'm thinking having the physical CD, having the DVD or the Blu-ray or whatever, having that versus streaming, there's still a little bit different. It's not the same. You're not getting the same performance as if you had that disc and you're playing it on assuming you have a good system, then if you stream it in 4K is usually not as good as the physical, components, I believe.
There's even an example that's completely non-political of something that Disney did is the Muppet Christmas movie.
Muppet Christmas movie.
They
Yes.
edited that for the DVD version and for the version that's on Disney Plus. There's this section during Scrooge's flashback where it's a sad moment in the Muppets Christmas Carol. That's the name of the movie. Muppets Christmas Carol. So during the past flashback, there's a sad moment where you see young Scrooge choose his career and money over marrying the woman that he loved. And it's this very sad moment, this sad song. And Disney ended up removing that because they decided that this is supposed to be a happy movie and it's supposed to be like a family comedy movie. And we don't want this sad song, this sad section in here that really shows the selfishness for whatever reason. But it then misses some of the depth because for a couple reasons, or a few reasons, many reasons. One is you see the development of Scrooge from where he was, the selfish, greedy person that he became at a young age to where he is now, and then his redemption arc. So you get that nice redemption arc. You're missing so much of that if you don't actually get to see where he came from. The other thing from a production perspective is that same song, the sad song in the movie, they reuse that tune later, but make it happy. They change the lyrics. They make it more upbeat, but it's the same melody. And it's showing the change in Scrooge from then. And that's the kind of thing, like, why did they have to remove that? But bringing this back to podcasting,
Right.
Spotify and now Apple Podcasts have this power to what I'm deciding to call quiet cancellation, where they can quietly cancel your podcast and your audience might not never realize you were canceled because Spotify always had this power. Apple gave themselves this power with iTunes 14.5. So because Apple Podcasts used to be the number one and it still is number one for many podcasts, the way that it used to work before iTunes 14.5 was that when you subscribe to or follow a podcast inside Apple Podcast, you would be directly connected to that podcast's RSS feed, which is the technical code that is how the episodes are delivered to you. So anytime that feed would be updated, the listener, you, would get that new episode.
Right.
iOS 14.5 changed that. And many podcasters don't realize this. Now, and Apple, I think they did this for two reasons. They did it for the performance reason, but they also, I think, did it intentionally to give themselves censorship power. Because now what happens is when you follow a podcast in Apple Podcasts, or even if you were before, you were moved to this system, you are now getting the podcast from Apple's proxy cached version of the podcast instead of directly from the RSS feed. So where this breaks down with this quiet cancellation thing, and I've tested this, and this is the way it works now, is if your podcast gets removed from Apple Podcasts, your audience will still have the podcast listing in their podcast app, but they will not get any new episodes from it. You can redirect the RSS feed if you want. You can publish new episodes. They will not get the episodes because they are now subscribed to Apple's version of your podcast, their proxy version, not directly to your podcast. So Apple could kick a podcast out of Apple Podcasts. Your audience would stop receiving new episodes, and they would think you just stopped podcasting. They wouldn't know that you were actually, quote, canceled or kicked out for whatever reason. And this isn't always for political reasons. Sometimes it's for technical.
And you may not know it unless, all of a sudden you may think as a creator, oh my gosh, my whole audience just dropped off. What did I do? And you're like, did I say something? Did I offend somebody? What, you can spiral down a hole of self-doubt there.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's important especially if you have any podcast that you are worried that cancel culture could come after it, do not use the top podcast apps. And if you have that podcast yourself, if you are the podcaster doing a podcast that you think might get flagged for whatever reasons, do not promote the top podcast apps either. And this is not a political position. Some people use it from political reasons, and I think that Apple gave themselves this power because of political reasons due to some things that happened previously. But think of it just as corporate censorship too. It could be any other reasons. Maybe it's, I'm not a supporter of unfamily friendly content, pornography and anything like that, but just to use that as an example, if that is the kind of content that you produce, don't promote the top platforms, because at some point they might decide, no, we don't want to have adult only content on our platform like that.
No,
and then you lose the connection with your audience.
Well, you're supposed to check in there. It's explicit, even their episodes and all that in podcasting and also like in YouTube. And and when you do that, if you've got a certain brand, you don't want all of a sudden, if people come there expecting it's family friendly and then all of a sudden your next episode is explicit, then you're not exercising responsibility as the creator to your audience. You should respect your audience and respect what they've shown up for.
That makes me think about a few years ago in, people doing action figure reviews. There was a big hubbub about, YouTube was shutting down channels' content because they were under the mistaken assumption that this content was made for children, even though you have to check in there that the stuff is not made for children.
Yeah.
So pretty much everybody who does that now, you have to put a disclaimer at the front of your video saying that this is not content made for children.
That's
interesting.
And
that is very good.
It's weird. I think
it's not just enough
on that a little bit, but
so it's not just enough to put it in when you're creating the episode, when you're publishing it to YouTube, you have to physically put it on screen.
Yes. That's why it appears in my intros.
I just thought you were being extra careful.
Well, that too.
But
it's a little bit of both. But you kind of, like I said, I think they backpedaled on that a little bit after it kind of, blew up within that community. But everybody's still, flagging it. So
Caveman, from our experience working with safety, there was the law that we had to abide by, but we always took it. Policy always exceeded what the law required.
Yes.
Just to keep you,
because policy,
give you that buffer. Yeah.
Policy in one state.
Right.
Well, law, when the company we work for, Walmart, when it makes company policy, it has to make it according to the laws of every single state that they're servicing.
Federal and state laws.
So all 50 states.
Right.
So they have to take that into consideration when they're making policy. So in some areas, it might seem like it's overkill. In some areas, it might seem like it's just the bare minimum.
Well, before the internet is what it is now, I can think back to 9/11 when songs like Free Falling were taken off the radio. There was a list of songs that couldn't be played after the 9/11 attacks. And, I was just like that guy, the lady on South Park that was on her couch for days watching the news cycle. And, the world's coming to an end, and all this and that. And, good Lord, what's happening? And sometimes people, especially in these days, that corporations own all of these studios and the Disneys, the Marvels, owns everything, and all these corporations, and they don't want to have that affect their stock because it's all about, trust me, it's all about the bottom line, and whatever affects the bottom line and upsets the stakeholders, you got to keep them happy. Sometimes very wrongly before your own people that you're servicing your products to. It's about, you don't want that bottom line or that next quarter's stock price to drop, or you don't want it to plummet or anything crazy like that. So sometimes they overcorrect and they overreact because something is deemed, it's like, I don't want to go down this road. Then maybe I shouldn't.
Well, then, hey, make a U-turn.
Yeah, I'm ready to make a U-turn. Yeah, because I promised myself at least this part of we would not go down that road. But we'll still address it. We're not scared of topics. We just don't want to turn it.
You don't want to open up Pandora's box unnecessarily.
Exactly, because I don't want to offend. I don't want to offend Pandora or her box. Or wait, that didn't come out right.
This does bring up a good point. Like, again, in podcasting is, or even just we see this online in businesses and such, where some companies, do you know their political position on a thing? Do you really care if they don't say something? Like your socks. Do you really care whether the company that makes your socks is pro-Trump or pro-Harris? Do you,
right?
Or do you care now that I've even put that idea?
I'm sure somebody's
mind?
Upset. Please don't be upset.
As long as it's covered my foot and doesn't have holes in it, I'm.
And if it was made in America and it's good quality.
But there are products where, that may make a difference.
Yeah, sure.
Things. But, socks and underwear.
I was thinking of something I won't say. You want that to be perfect or your family just got bigger. Oopsies.
So with some of these things, it's like, we don't care about their political position until they make us care. And in podcasting or in any kind of content too, you have to make that decision too. Is this a hill you're willing to die on? Are you willing to lose your audience? Are you willing to, quote, offend, unquote, people to say and share your opinion about this thing? Does it even belong in your podcast? And right. I had an interesting experience with this in the past with one of the podcasts that I did. There was a tiny, tiny little thing that happened at the very end of an episode. And the whole episode of this TV show that we were talking about would have been fine. This tiny little thing made no difference to the whole of the episode. And that tiny little thing, though, was rather controversial from a perspective that didn't apply to the show. So for our podcast, I made the decision, it was my call. I decided, hey, let's just not talk about it. Let's just not open the controversy. Let's just, both to respect the people involved and that have differing opinions, let's just respectfully be silent about this thing. And there's really not much to talk about anyway on it. So we chose silence. Boy, the hate I received for that was crazy. But I think part of the reason,
right.
yeah, part of the reason that I received hate was that it was a hot button issue and people were offended that I didn't talk about their hot button issue in content where it did occur.
It's because we've made everything political. And we're so polarized, and we're ready to execute the person for what they believe before we even hear what it is they're going to say. And you got to wait at least for the question before you can complain about it.
Yeah.
Well, there's also that old saying that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And
yeah.
Sometimes it just doesn't matter which way you go. You're going to catch it either way.
So sometimes you have to make that decision of, this just doesn't belong in my podcast. I am a firm believer we all leak our worldview. We all leak our beliefs. Whatever that is that we hold, we leak that. I mean, Ed has referred to some things already that's leaked his worldview, even though he didn't mean to. I could tell, oh yeah, okay, that's his worldview on that. That's where he believes there.
But my worldview has changed. It's changed over time. I've had that discussion with friends, and I'm personally close enough to the middle that I like to think that if my table's small enough, if my table is small and I don't see enough representation of different types and voices of people, then maybe my table's too small. I like that adage. Because I believe we all have a place, we all have a voice. What we have to say is important, but what we've lost is the agree to disagree and the respect for each other. Yeah. And we've lost the civility, not to say there was what was the presidents that had the duel on the White House lawn. Thankfully we're not to that place, where they're having duels and all that. I don't know. We haven't seen November yet, but whatever kind of Jumanji we're playing here, I don't like it. I want a new game, but
and it's unfortunate that is kind of the state of society where like people are like, oh, you have to say something about this. And then when you finally do, they're like, how dare you say that? And it almost doesn't matter what you say, but whenever you're creating content, you kind of have to make that decision of where are your boundaries going to be, of what are you going to let yourself get into, how much of your worldview are you going to let leak, what kinds of things are you going to talk about? Because no matter what you say, someone is going to misinterpret it. I mean, gosh, I have been called so many bad things lately that are completely untrue.
I've followed it, all for a hashtag that says Christian. And, you shouldn't. I knew a man who was crucified for being a Christian, and he did pretty well. But
that's good.
It's even like when I tell people about my podcast, even family, and they don't listen, and I'm like, well, maybe you got to die first before your art can be appreciated. They're busy, but that's the thing is, I don't know, and I there are times you'd be surprised. I mean, people look at me and they think they already know what they see, but it's not always what they see. I've been called from different types of parties that they think, oh, you're definitely that. And I'm like, you'd be surprised. I'm like, sometimes, I like what one of my favorite comedians is Chris Rock. And he said, I don't answer the question before I've heard it. And I like that. He hasn't made up his mind before he's heard the question, essentially. So that's kind of how I am. If you can show me facts that make sense, then I'll certainly consider what you're saying. I may not agree with it, but I certainly support your right to say what you feel. So
I think we all have some boundary that we feel like, okay, the people I listen to, the content that we consume, I'm okay with them getting up to this particular line and understanding. Some people that think this way of, I'm okay with them getting up to this line as long as they don't cross over that. Some people put that line like so far back. It's like, hey, if you even just mention the name of someone they don't like, regardless of what you have to say about that person. You might even hate that person, but you're just saying that person's name instantly means they don't want to listen to you because you brought that person up and you triggered them in some way. And gosh, how can we get society back from that? I think that as podcasters and content creators on YouTube and whatever, that I think many times have the opportunity to present an authenticity that no one else gets to do. That especially like when you're doing the casual content, this kind of stuff like we're doing, or like Cavemann, like you're doing with your reviewing action figures and things, and you're not writing a script for that, are you?
No. It's completely off the cuff. Now, I have
automatic.
Yes, I have some of it that it's pretty formulaic. I film stuff in batches, and I do certain segments. Like this one segment is going to be where I just talk about the paint apps on the figure, the articulation, the way it looks, and then then I have comparing it to other stuff, and then the closing statements, and like the closing statements, that's all just whatever is rambling through my mind at the time about it, and then of course I have at the very end my whole like, share, and subscribe, and look at the channel membership,
you have to do
if it interests you, that kind of stuff. And I save all that for the end because I used to do it all the way at the beginning of the episode. And I did notice there was less of a drop off when I do it at the end rather than at the beginning. So people watch it longer when you don't go through that whole stuff.
Yeah, the like, share, and subscribe thing.
Yeah.
If no one ever gets on there and said, I need everybody to unsubscribe, unlike, unshare.
Yes. Please don't like my content.
Please don't like my content. Go away. Now here's
that's
my
what
content.
that's what Mike Zero does every time I see one of his videos.
Oh, one of his.
When I see his thumbnails pop up in my
there's a guy I listen to, sometimes Critical Drinker, which is I think a clever name. And he goes. At the end, he goes, now go away. I love that. That's a good way to close the show.
But like what I love about this authenticity that we have in this independent content creation, I guess we could call it, no matter what platform that you're using, is that people get to know us better. And so I think they start to feel like they have a relationship with us, and they might even to some extent. And so sometimes their tolerance for certain perspectives might be more loud, that they think, well, yeah, he or she has this differing view, but I consider them my friend at this point, or whatever.
Well, it's like Ed and myself. We often disagree on political issues, and but at the end of the day, we're friends, and we, like he was saying before, we can agree to disagree, and sometimes he's changed my mind on things. Sometimes I've changed his mind on things.
But what?
So sometimes I'm way out on this side and he's way out on that side. But we swing back toward the middle, and I think that's where stuff really needs to lie.
It's
in the middle of the road, and where people can hash it out and decide what is actually the better course of action.
We become friends with our content creators. I mean, me, Daniel, Ray, Dave Jackson, and Cliff Ravenscroft, we've all been best friends for several decades at this point, and none of them knew it. Recently.
I think that's called being a stalker.
I was going to say, how can I say that and it's not like a stalker? But there's some things that Daniel may say on that I don't agree with, and I've challenged him on it, and he's called me out on it, and I'm like, okay, but we're still friends. And there's times I'm like, I can't talk to Daniel right now. Just want to hear his content. I'll go listen to his content because if you get a lot of downloads on Audacity podcast, somehow it's locked into my app on Amazon Music, which is my go-to one. So I'm
the clicking has. We have lost Ed.
Ed.
I'm not sure he can hear us anymore.
Ed.
He has succumbed to the static.
Yes.
This is those moments that, like, for podcasting, I'm always so grateful that we can edit these moments out.
No. That's weird. I just lost all your audio. It said something in the browser.
Oh, we can hear.
Doesn't like me.
It's breaking up.
I cannot hear y'all. I can't hear y'all.
Okay.
I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I promise I didn't do anything.
You touched it.
It has lost its voice. Yes, I've lost my voice.
That'd be a first.
Okay, Ed, you can't hear you. Hear you, but it's static. Really? I can't hear you all.
Your stuff sounds weird, man.
Maybe that's the powers that be saying that
it's staticky and sounds like you need to unplug something and plug it back in again or something. I don't know.
I don't know if this is going to disconnect me. This is all.
Yeah, the funny thing about what's happening is that it's like catching snippets of his voice and then playing it super fast, right?
It is. It is. It is.
What does that mean? Yeah, we're getting. He's been sucked into a parallel universe.
He hit the. We can sort of.
He can hear us.
I can't leave the studio. You can hear me a little bit. Seriously, something happened and I cannot hear you whatsoever. Not a word you were saying. There's a glitch in the Matrix. I agree. I am a robot. Private chat. There we go. Here's snippets of you at double speed. It's really rare. Let me speed up. Talk really fast.
I heard something said at double speed.
I can't hear you. I've lost. I can't. I hear you.
Can you hear now? No.
I'm going to stop my mic and can't. Let's see.
So for anyone wondering what I usually recommend in this situation, because the static was building over the minutes.
Try that. Okay,
so what I recommended to him is unplug and replug, especially if you're coming into a computer through a USB interface.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Just bear with me.
Is that like the tried and true IT thing of turn it off and turn it back on?
Yeah, but a much easier, smoother way of it. It's a weird thing that I don't know. Like it's like a caching issue or something.
Give me 1 second. I think it's Audacity.
The USB.
Give me 1 second. Audacity froze. So I'm exporting that. So don't. Is the audio back up? Which I have on Rodecaster Pro. These are technical difficulties. Right,
yes, there's always technical difficulties.
This down. Yes. I did say that. All right. Let's see comments. Try to unplug and replug. Okay.
Unplugged.
I can hear you. Oh, I have to.
I hear you now, but it's not. It's the other mic.
Hold on. I'm working on that. Accessing. Please stand by. Your call is important to us. It will be answered in the order it was received. Okay, speakers. Okay, it's not recognizing the Rodecaster Pro. Why? Evil thing. Okay, settings. This never happens.
It's Windows 11.
Well, we're 2.5 hours into this.
Please note, recording settings are disabled while live. Really? Really? This has never happened. All right, test. Oh, sorry. That was... Okay, I've lost Rodecaster Pro. No! All right, that's still recording, though. Okay, let me try again. Oh, this is embarrassing. All right. Rodecaster Pro is running. Sound settings. Sound speeds. Okay. Now I need audio. We're going to plug you back in.
See, usually, Daniel, this all happens
beforehand.
Before we start, and then the show starts like 30 minutes late.
Right. I've been there. We were talking about all that hardware setup before. I think the first time I was going to try to record a podcast in front of a live audience, I had all my mixer and all of this gear with me, and it took way too long to set up. I thought I could set it up in 15 minutes. No. And then I wanted to live stream while I was recording in front of this live audience as well. So live stream from this conference center. And in that moment, my website went down because the hosting provider had some major network issue.
Oh, no.
This was back in 07 or 08, I think. And it was just a nightmare that here I'm trying to diagnose this problem, all of this, and started really late. Or like at the first podcast movement, I regret like getting so distracted by it. Something was not working with the projector. Like I designed my slides in 16:9 widescreen ratio, and it was being cut off by the projector. I was doing all this stuff. Like I know how to do a presentation. I know how to work with presentation stuff. Why wasn't it working? And I could not figure it out. Like I did the stuff that I should never have to do to try to make it work, and it still wasn't working. And then someone in the audience realized, oh, the projector was just too close to the screen. And so it was just projecting off the screen. So he just moved the projector back. And I felt so
Oh, yeah. You always feel like, oh, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, and I wasted like 8 minutes focused on this. What I really should have done is I should have known, okay, this is not a problem on my computer. And can someone just look at the projector, see if there's something there, or just gone on without worrying about it? Because it was a really bad start to my session, but I'm glad that I redeemed it after that and ended up that session got a standing ovation actually. And I was happy with how the session turned out. Or there was this moment where one of the weirdest computer problems I've ever had before, my original MacBook Pro, a 17-inch MacBook Pro, an Intel, had this weird problem where if it was not plugged into an external monitor, it could not boot up successfully. So here I was at this conference where I was supposed to be the keynote speaker, and I'm in the hallway making sure my computer is all ready, and it's just doing this reboot cycle. It will not boot into the operating system at all. And I'm trying, and this was before I knew that it had to be plugged into a monitor to work. Something was wrong with the motherboard. So that's why it was having this failure. But just, I couldn't do it. And so at that point, I made a better decision that time. I just decided, okay, I can't make this work. I know my presentation. I'll do it without the slides. I don't really need the slides. That's the way I present too. If I use slides, they are just complimentary and help provide some extra content. It's not like, hey, everybody, now look at the slide instead of looking at me. I try to think of, hey, if you were listening to my presentation with your eyes closed, could you still get all the value from it? And so the way I introduced it, as I said, I started off my talk, I said something like, due to technical problems, or I said, I want you all to close your eyes for a moment and just imagine for me the most beautiful slides you've ever seen. I'm talking like angels singing, babies laughing, warming your heart, making you feel the best you've ever felt. Now open your eyes and realize there's nothing on the screen behind me. And that's fine. Yeah. We're going to do this without slides. I just rolled with it. And sometimes that's what it takes in podcasting, especially live streaming. I don't actively live stream any shows right now, but I've been there with the technical stuff. But the way it is with live streaming, it's always better to start late than start early.
Can y'all hear me at all?
Yes.
Yes, I hear you now.
Internal mic.
Okay. Yeah. So apparently it's stopped the roadcast. Let's see.
Could it be like an overheating problem?
No, the Rodecaster Pro is fine, but the the USB, how it runs into the Rodecaster Pro, it's not recording that channel. I literally can record it off of my microphone here. So it's getting that. And I think you're actually getting the sound from the internal speakers here, because it will not let me switch while recording, while live streaming. It will not let me change my audio settings.
Oh, interesting. It let me change mine.
Because I go to audio, and the only thing that shows up is my default microphone array, communications microphone array, whatever microphone array is, is there. And then because my Rodecaster Pro, it's not recognizing the Rodecaster Pro. I can't get it to. I love this. This is just, this is like, I don't know why it won't. Maybe I'll turn off the Rodecaster Pro. I did that though. I already rebooted the Rodecaster Pro, and it's still not recognizing it through the laptop for the connection there. Why?
Well, then how about this? Let's, get the final stuff in and go ahead and we're already, we're already over 2.5.
We're already a little over what I agreed to and or what Daniel agreed to. So yeah, I'm not, I got the majority of it. So I am so embarrassed and happy at the same time. So anyway, hopefully everybody can hear me on YouTube. It's still going out. I'm going to start another stream after this, and that's going to be the open stream that I was going to do. So, anybody can come in and all that fun, assuming I can get this to work. But I want to thank you, Daniel, for being here. Daniel J. Lewis, boom, boom, boom. There's some more comments there. Wait a minute, banners. I got to look for the banners. That's what I love about StreamYard, the different banners I can do. And I can say, you are not there. I want to thank, where is it? Ray Ortega from the Podcasters Roundtable, our sound engineer influencer, as I call him, for being part of this, for popping in. I do appreciate it, Ray, so much. Let me know when the next Podcasters Roundtable is, hint, hint. And we have our main guest here, along with DigitalCavemann, by the way, who's here. Oh, you lost your things at the bottom. You don't have your things that say who you are.
That's because you got a comment up.
Oh, thank you.
Put the
Sorry.
comment down. They'll come back.
It's live. Somebody said, why do you do stuff live?
I thought it was Memorex.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. Not anymore. Never again. Not going to find that doggone comment up pinned. Where is it? Hide current comment. There you go. That works. All right. There you are. So I'm not doing a great outro here. Let's see. There we are. Okay, there you are. Daniel J. Lewis. Okay, that's the crawl. Audacity to podcast, a Hall of Fame podcaster. Did you want to talk real quick about that? We didn't get to touch on that. What is it like to be a Hall of Fame podcaster?
It was really encouraging because it came after I've been through some dark stuff, some really challenging stuff in my life.
We've all been through Disney buying Star Wars.
Yeah, we've all had the Disney in our lives, buying our childhood dreams and ruining them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been through some hard stuff personally, and then on top of that, some professional hard stuff later. And so for the Hall of Fame stuff to come up was just really encouraging because for me, it reaffirmed, like, there's that the SNL sketch. I don't even remember who acted in it, but he's like, and gosh darn it, people like me. And like to kind of realize that, yes, people do still value my contributions. People do still benefit and have benefited from things that I've done in the past, and to have that kind of recognition and to get to share my story that really, for me, in my speech, I really focused on how podcasting was like there for me in many ways and in many different times of life, and how as podcasters can be there for others to change the world, even if we change the world for only one person, because I've been that one person before. So to get to share that story, to get the recognition for my contributions in the industry was really exciting, such an honor. And I loved it. It was a dream, and just that it worked out so well that my parents, who live only an hour away from Cincinnati,
right.
were able to be there in Florida that weekend. They were going to be there anyway. And what that meant also was that my son, my 7-year-old son, could come and be there too. That was what was so special. And there's this precious moment that happened in the speech. And I've got the speech, my edited version on YouTube, where in my speech, I mention that my son is there. And then what he did is he just shouted out, "That's me." And he's this, awesome. Fresh 7-year-old at the time. And just that, and everyone clapped for him being there. Just having him there with me, and that the specialness of that was.
And I don't know was it you inducted Dave, or did Dave induct you?
Both.
You got to see that had to be special too. You and Dave Jackson both inducting each other then in that sense.
Yeah.
So
I did the speech for him because I wasn't a Hall of Fame member yet, but he invited me to induct him. So I was so honored to do that speech to introduce him. And then when I was being inducted, which was a total surprise to me that I was being inducted. So when I was being inducted, then I thought, well, I definitely want Dave to do the speech for me. Not because he asked me to do the speech for him, but just because of how he's been there for me and how he's encouraged me in our friendship. Yeah, it's been exciting, but does it actually make my business better? Have I gotten any news coverage for it? No, I've tried actually. I reached out to some of the local news agencies and I've said, "Hey, do you want to cover this story?" Nothing.
You need to have that sob story like in the Olympics that you came from nothing and then you worked in the labor camp till you were
that's not just the Olympics. They have that sob story on American Idol. Yeah. And all those talent shows have it.
Overcome obstacles. No, I was from an affluent family, and yes, our stock portfolio dipped one year when I was 8 years old. It was a rough year.
I can say I went from a pantyhose pop filter to where I am today, and you can too.
That's right.
That sounds like a great infomercial right there.
Don't let your lack of pantyhose keep you from your dreams. I don't know. Well, that's great. I think things come along and people come along exactly like Gandalf says, a wizard is never late. He's never early, arrives exactly when he's supposed to. And I think that's how God works. He kind of puts people and things in your life when you most need them. And, we want things on our time. And, I want to be a successful podcaster. Well, what is successful? Is it being an influencer and having the cars and everything and $10 million worth of debt? Or is it being debt free and just, living a good life and being good to others? It's how you determine what that worth is. And I'm glad that you got that moment. And thankfully you were alive to see it. Like most artists don't get that. They have to wait, or they're 80 years old or 108. And they're like, I remember back in the old days and we did it this way.
This year for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we're going to induct 12 dead artists.
Exactly.
Too bad they can't be here to enjoy it.
Yeah. But awesome. Well, let's see. What else? Well, that's it. I guess we're going to end this because this is almost 3 hours. And thank you for being here, Daniel. It means the world. I didn't think anybody'd show up because that's always my fear. And I'm glad you did. And I may not be big in the podcasting world or an influencer in any way, but it just made my day. So I appreciate that a lot.
Big congratulations for sticking it through for 10 years. Yes. And, episode after episode, or just
one thing technically, I guess if we're being technical, I was looking at it. I did start the podcast 10 years ago, but I think right around after I started it, and may have been before or sometime before I put out my first official episode, because I had some teasers for it coming. I can't remember, and as I forgive myself for can't remember if it was my mother or my father, but one of them took ill or passed away during that time of starting the podcast. And so it was almost a year before I got it up and going. an actual podcast, an official episode. I had kind of preliminary promo episodes and like, but it was weird in the timing of it. But, that's why I think, we do things in our time frame, but the good Lord has things destined when they're going to appear in your life and when things are going to become something. And so that's an interesting fact. Anyway, so, I don't know how to end it. That's what Cavemann will say. I just want to go on forever. I never want to push the end button, but I guess we have to. But thank you, everybody in the chat who showed up. I like what Prophet Director says. We'll end it on that. I determine my success by how happy I am. That's a good enough metric for me. Thank you once again, Daniel. People can reach you at the Audacity, the podcast, on their favorite podcast app of choice.
In your favorite podcast app.
Yes. And they can also, and also at the Audacity to podcast.com. They can, if they want to hire you or whatever they want to do with you, if they want to learn about Podgagement, I said it properly. They can find all that information there. So I'll shut up and Caveman, thank you for being here. So for everybody who's watching, I'm going to end this stream, try to set up a new stream, and we're going to come back with the Anything Goes podcast, continuing our celebration. But this is going to end our portion with Daniel here and Ray Ortega, who showed up. And Dave, I wish you could have made it. I hope your concert went well and all that. So anyway, I guess I'm going to say bye. Thank you, guys. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to another exciting episode of the Geek Homeworld Podcast with your host, Ed, a.k.a. the Savage Tech Man. Remember to follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for being a part of the Geek Homeworld. Geek Homeworld.